Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the December 6, 2011 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. There are agendas on both sides of the room, so if you'd like to pick one up and follow along with us tonight and the items that we discuss, I would encourage you to do so. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment with respect to the items that we'll be discussing tonight, as well as an opportunity for general comment on matters of a general nature. It is customary that we begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So at this point in time, I'm going to call up PAC 86, who's going to come up in front here very quietly. Glad to have you guys here tonight. And once you all get up here, we're all going to stand. And you guys can turn around and say hi to the camera very nicely. And now you turn back around. Flags over here, and you guys are going to help us say the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very well done, guys. So, gentlemen, if you would please go back to your seats. Now, we have a very loaded agenda tonight and a long meeting, but this is one of the smartest groups of scouts that I've ever had the pleasure to talk with. So we negotiated. They wanted to ask 135 questions, and we negotiated it down to 3. So if there are 3 volunteers who, one at a time, would like to walk up to the podium and ask a question. I'm sorry, you see the microphone over there to your right? Where Mr. Baker's standing? And if you ask a question, I will pick on one of my fellow commissioners to answer it. And first, why don't you tell us what your name is?
Luke.
Luke.
Rankin.
How are you tonight? Welcome. And what's your question?
When are they going to fix the roads?
When are they going to fix the roads? I'm going to give that one to Commissioner Barnett.
Sooner rather than later, I hope, Luke. We're working at it. We got a lot of work to do, don't we? Where do you think the worst road in town is?
Downers Grove.
The whole thing? You might be right.
All right. Thank you, Luke. All right, question number 2. Who's our next volunteer? Please, up to the microphone. Give us your name.
My name is Trey.
Trey, thank you for coming. And what's your question?
What's the difference between a village and a city?
What's the difference between a village and a city? Well, I'm not going to ask our council members that question. I have someone who's really smart when it comes to those things. That's our village attorney. That's Miss Petrarca, and I'm stalling long enough so she can collect her thoughts.
Really, the biggest difference is just the way that it was originally set up, if they called it a village or if they called it a city. So really, not a whole lot.
Okay.
Thank you, Trey. Okay, we got time for one more question. Nice job. Come on up to the microphone. Please give us your name.
Gavin.
Gavin, all right. What's your question?
What's your favorite thing to do for your job?
What's my favorite thing to do for my job? I think I'm going to take this one myself. It's to meet with scouts. Because I got more energy from meeting with you guys in 20 minutes than I probably got all year. I wish I could put it in a bottle and keep it for later. Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure seeing you guys. Thanks for doing a great job in leading us with the pledge. And I'm on a round of applause for PAC 86. Okay, now, you guys, we'll see you. Have a good time next door, okay? All right, thanks, guys. Remember our quiet rules. All right, after that brief intermission, now we will actually call the meeting to order. I'll ask our fine village clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Rankin?
Here.
Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Here.
Commissioner Durkin?
Here.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Here.
Commissioner Schnell? Here. Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 3 on our agenda, which involves the approval of minutes of council meetings, or at least the first item does. And we have one set of minutes on the agenda tonight, and those are the minutes from our November 15th, 2011 meeting. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes from any members of the council? Hearing none. Motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None? Great. The minutes have been approved unanimously. And now we will pause for another special presentation. And this one is obviously a very meaty subject because it has to do with the Economic Development Corporation's quarterly report. As most residents know, a number of years ago, the village was part of creating a separate Economic Development Corporation that is really playing a critical role in maintaining the economic vitality of the village in both attracting and maintaining high-quality, vibrant businesses in our community, which of course is essential to our long-term financial health. We are privileged to have here tonight, for the first time, giving his first report, the president of the Economic Development Corporation, Mr. Michael Casa. Michael, welcome. We're glad to have you here tonight. And we look forward and are sitting on the edges of our respective seats to hear what you have to tell us tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's an old Hollywood tradition. You never follow children to the stage, so I've already broken that rule tonight. Thank you very much. It's been 4 months now since I became president of the Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation. I'm grateful for this opportunity and for the tremendous support that I've received from the mayor and the commissioners, and Dave Fieldman and his team at Village Hall have been great to work with. I'm fortunate to report that I report to an outstanding board of directors, and that board includes the CEOs of 2 of our important strategic partners, the Chamber and the Downtown Management Corp, and Linda Kunze from the Management Corp is here tonight. And as you know, we recently hired Lisa Wenzel as our new Director of Marketing and Tourism, and we are now interviewing applicants for the office manager position. We have our second interviews next week. In the last few months, we have begun to build a large prospect database by contacting commercial, office, and industrial developers, brokers, and corporate real estate managers. And this includes several big box retail anchors. My goal is that we're going to be able to reach out over the course of a year to all the decision makers, not just through Illinois, but throughout the United States. So when opportunities come around, we'll be ready. Meetings have also been held with property owners, property managers, and brokers that represent local commercial and office centers. These meetings are not only helpful to identify potential new tenants for our shopping centers and office buildings, but also help us to retain existing tenants. In October, the EDC participated in the International Council of Shopping Centers show as part of the Choose DuPage team. Phase 4 of the OASIS program was completed this summer, and applications for Phase 5 are now being reviewed. 2 of the most important business projects that the DG, EDC, and the village staff have worked on will be presented tonight, later in this meeting. That's Bentley and the new Lemon Tree Agreement. As for the attraction of visitors to our community, the Downers Grove Visitors Bureau has reserved ad space in several publications for 2012, including ads in the Illinois Tourism Guide, West Suburban Living Magazine, and Midwest Meetings. And the Android version of the mobile app has been completed. We are working with the vendor to add some additional features to the app, and a full promotional rollout of the mobile app with the iPhone and Android versions will be launched after the first of the year. There are 2 important initiatives that I want to talk about tonight, as well as talk about our plan in order to report progress on our work. Thank you, Mike. The first is at the EDC's Executive Committee meeting on December 16th, I'm going to present a plan to put together a 5-year strategic plan for economic development and for tourism. We'll spend most of next year working on this plan, and I want to talk about some of the basic features of it. First of all, we're going to use the Village of Downers Grove Comprehensive and Master Plans as our guide, which is what most EDCs do. We'll also take a look in our research as best practices, that is, how do other economic development corporations and visitors bureaus tackle the same opportunities and issues that we do. We'll conduct key person interviews, and I'd like that to include all the members of the Village Council. We'll set up teams to tackle different issues, and again, we'd like to welcome you to serve on some of those teams. We will hold a strategic planning retreat for our board of directors. We'll review our mission and vision statements, identify goals and critical success factors, and critical success factors represent how you accomplish those goals. We'll work on a branding strategy, which is how do we want people and companies outside of our borders to think of Downers Grove when they hear that name. We'll prepare a draft report, and that report will contain benchmarks. We will measure our progress and our success, not just every year, but every quarter, and we'll report those benchmarks to you as part of our quarterly report. I believe it's important, if an organization is going to be successful, to have a strategic plan, one that we publish, share with the community, and then report on our progress on those measurable benchmarks that will be laid out in the plan. The second initiative I want to talk about is another important one for our organization. At the December 16th Executive Committee meeting, I'm going to present a proposal to launch a funding campaign. It is very common for economic development corporations to launch funding campaigns every 4 to 5 years. The last one our EDC launched was in 2008. We have budgeted $50,000 in our 2012 budget as a campaign goal. We're going to invite businesses in Downers Grove and local governments other than the village, which has already been very generous with us, to join the Economic Development Corporation. We're going to establish a campaign committee and campaign teams to go out and call on companies. We're going to design promotional materials. There'll be a special section of our website. We'll have a campaign kickoff, and again, as I mentioned, the goal is to raise at minimum $50,000 in additional support for our organization. If we are to be truly a public-private partnership, then we need to have the support, both in terms of financial, but also human support, volunteer support from the private sector, as well as other governmental bodies. The last point that I wanted to highlight was reporting. I've been here 4 months. I started at the middle of one quarter, and we are towards the end of the current quarter. But I wanted to lay out for you how we're going to report our progress and hopefully our successes, not just next year, but beyond. There'll be an annual presentation that we will do not only to the village, but also to all the governmental bodies. I've already scheduled presentations for both school districts, Park District, and we're going to schedule one before the library, and perhaps other civic organizations, where we will come in and talk about our annual report. That annual report will be published in early February. The EDC has done this in the past. We're going to put that in a PowerPoint presentation, make it available on our website, and go into the community and talk about our successes and opportunities from the previous year and looking ahead to the new year. So sometime in February, we'll schedule time to come before you and to present our 2011 annual report, which will not only talk about projects that we've worked on, but we'll break down into statistics in terms of job creation, jobs retained, number of projects that were completed, square footage leased, things like that. And we'll come in, sales taxes generated, property taxes generated. We'll bring all that information to you as part of an annual report. We're also going to deliver a quarterly report. This one today is a little sort of my first go at it, but you'll start to see with the next report, they'll be much more structured in terms of here's what our results were, and that report will be in written form. Again, not only available to you, but we'll put it on our website and make it available to the community. The same thing's true with our board of directors, which meets each quarter. They'll also receive a report, pretty much the same report, again, looking to measure our success and progress. And finally, we're going to launch a quarterly electronic newsletter that will not only be sent to all of you and members of the village staff, but anybody in the community will be able to sign up for it. It'll just talk about economic development priorities, new businesses that have opened, just information that may be of interest to the business community and to our residents. And then monthly, our executive committee, which includes the mayor, Commissioner Durkin, and Manager Fieldman, meets each month, and there's a written report that goes to them. So we're going to report our progress monthly, quarterly, and on an annual basis. And let me, looking ahead to next year, I'm looking at providing that annual report, which will include the results of the fourth quarter, in February. We'll do the first quarter report in May, the second quarter report in August, and then in November, we'll do the third quarter report, and then we'll also come in and talk about the priorities for the following year. And I'll stop there and see if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Casa. Appreciate the quarterly report, and we look forward to many, many more of them, and particularly ones that are studded with many successes for our community. Once again, thank you for the presentation. Before opening up for questions and comments from my colleagues, I in particularly am pleased to see the effort that you're undertaking to partner, branch out, cooperate, collaborate, and communicate with both the private sector as well as going to the other taxing bodies in town that represent shared constituents with the village, because I think that's part of the theme that this council and the prior council has picked up on in terms of it's something that the Economic Times simply demand. It's in terms of continuing to provide the services that the community deserves in an efficient manner. So, you know, also undertaking that effort through your organization, in addition to the efforts that the village is undertaking, I think is all for the good. So I appreciate that in particular. Questions or comments with respect to the quarterly report, Commissioner Schnell?
Just one actually question, comment. I wholeheartedly agree with the mayor in that I think you're reaching out to the private part of our community as far as for contributions is more than needed, because if your organization is going to grow at all, you need additional funds, and just because of the economy and everything else, those funds cannot come from the village. Question I do have is, since your tourism funds are limited, are you going to be reaching out, or your associate going to be reaching out to hotels and other types of properties to try to boost the tourism budget itself too, or is it simply going to boost the Economic Development Corporation's budget?
A good question, Commissioner Schnell. We're looking at some additional revenue in three ways. The first is that the companies we're going to go out and meet with and asking them to invest in the Economic Development Corporation. Many of them will have a tourism priority to them, the hotels, restaurants, companies like that. Secondly, there are grant funds available at the state level through the Illinois Office of Tourism. If you meet their criteria, they'll oftentimes pay for website development, ads that you will run in regional and state national publications, collateral material that will be developed. A lot of those will be available for grant funding, and so actually for some ads that we're running, we're looking to actually have grants that will help pay for up to 40% of those, the cost of those. The third area, and probably one that I think we're pretty excited about, and that is to use the mobile app, not only to help tell Downers Grove's story and to let people know everything there is to see and do here, but also it's an opportunity for companies to promote themselves through the mobile app. And so we've begun talking to the vendor, Solstice, that did the work for us, and we've actually identified about 7 other communities in the United States that use a mobile app to promote themselves. And we're going to be talking to them in terms of how do they recoup their investment and how do they turn that to some extent into an opportunity to also generate some revenue.
Thank you.
Good question.
Other questions, Commissioner Barnett?
You really perked my ears up when you talked about other local government entities. Are you envisioning that as just heightened communications, or are asking them to be members of the EDC?
Well, now that I'm sure they're going to read this in the paper, yes, we are going to.
The answer is yes?
We are going to invite the other governmental bodies to join the Economic Development Corporation. Obviously, the village has a big stake in sales tax revenues. The other governmental bodies have a big stake in property tax revenues. You can imagine the property taxes that are generated when a new office building goes up or a shopping center goes up. It's a tremendous amount of money. So we are going to be coming to them and asking them to participate in our organization. Some already are, but we're also going to ask that they help on the financial side as well. We think anyone with a stake in our community, private or public, should be supporting the EDC, and certainly the other governmental bodies have a stake in this as well. And I expect they'll be very, very willing to support us.
That's fantastic. When the mayor uses the word demand, speaking of these times, he's spot on. And historically, I think maybe there wasn't always the heightened awareness of the competitive nature of being a community. So you're highlighting that and trying to leverage all of our assets to push that forward is fantastic. That's great work, and I hope that it proves fruitful, and I guess I'd just encourage you to make sure that you pull all the assets available to you in as those conversations move on.
There's not only a tremendous amount of assets in this community, but there's a tremendous talent pool here. And so when I go talk to companies and other governmental bodies, I want to have them serve on committees and become involved in our organization. I want to tap into that talent pool, and that'll just help make us even more successful. So.
Thank you. Commissioner Durkin.
Yeah, real quick, I just want to compliment Michael on what he's done so far. You know, he did come in the middle of a quarter. He had huge shoes to fill with the departure of Greg Bedeloff, who really started the organization and got it running and got it to such a high level of respect within not only the community, the county, but within the business community. And Michael came to us with experience from Oswego. I'll say it, you didn't, I get to say it. And he not only came in here, but the day he came in here, he was running. I mean, every time I reach out to Michael, he's always in a meeting, he's always talking to someone. And as the liaison for this council on the executive board of the EDC, I feel some responsibility of looking for opportunities for new businesses to come into town. And I know I always just share them with the manager and with the mayor, but when I give them to Michael, he's already responded back. I already met with him, or I got a meeting or something. So, you know, even though there were big shoes to fill, Michael's made those shoes even bigger. And he's doing a great job, and I know many of you, if not all of you, have already met with him. But if you got any ideas, and like he speaks, you know, to make us a better organization, it's your input, it's the residents' input, and I can't encourage you enough to either call them or shoot them an email. Even the residents, you know, if you got any questions, any concerns, I don't want to make him any more busier than he already is, but you know, this is our EDC, and it's our organization that makes it a better place to be for Downers Grove in the long run. So I encourage all of you to participate, get involved. It could be as little as, hey, you know, what's the story with this or that, or a new business coming into town. So I know we do it for the downtown management group, but I encourage you to do it as well here, if not more so now, because of the challenging times with the big city to the east of us, with wanting to pull our business partners out of our community and to make their city a little bit bigger and better. But we need all the help we can get. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you for those kind words.
Commissioner Neustadt.
Thank you, Mayor. In line with what Commissioner Durkin is saying, when Michael came to the village, he listened, and that's a great trait. He met with all of us, he met with stakeholders, and this presentation tonight shows me exactly that. He's going to start to communicate more as an organization. He's going to reach out to the community and the community members, not just businesses, but residents as well. And that's something that I know Michael and I have talked about, and I'm sure others have expressed, that the residents are part of this community, are the community really when it comes down to it. So I appreciate that. Also, as Commissioner Durkin said just the other day, I had a conversation with Michael about a large retail opportunity that I think would make a great fit, and some other residents have approached me about. And he's already met with and talked with that particular realtor and retail outlet. So the EDC is a great partner, a great component to our village, and I'm looking forward to what we can do in the future to make it even better. I know Michael is already on the path for that, and look forward to the continued partnership with downtown management and the Chamber of Commerce. It's a great trifecta when it's working in a well-oiled machine, and it is right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any comment, Commissioner Wallach?
No,
I'm not putting you on the spot.
no, not at all. I just didn't want to belabor the. I do want to thank Michael for his work so far. I know he has some challenges coming in, and by what he presented tonight, you just piled on some more challenges and some extra reporting. But thank you for your report. I appreciate it.
My
Thank you.
pleasure.
Thank you,
Just
Commissioner.
one thing I want to say, you know, I get asked all the time, including by all of you and the staff, what can we do to help? The comment that I hear the most from business people is how positive when they meet a commissioner, when they meet the mayor, when they meet the staff, talk to other business people. There's just a tremendous positive sense that people get when they come to this town. Not that we don't have challenges like everyone else does, but we don't let it get us down here. I mean, it's the thing that's been impressed me the most in my 4 months is just how positive everybody is about the community that they're in. And that makes a big difference. Companies don't want to hear about problems. They want to hear about opportunities. And so you're all ambassadors for the town, and it helps me out tremendously.
Well, thank you, and I certainly hope that you do have the problem of being too busy. That would be an okay problem.
I'm already there.
Good, good. That's a good sign, and I think it goes without, it bears repeating that it's important to maintain both a strong and vibrant residential community as a strong and vibrant business community, because they are interrelated and keep each other strong. I think it's important for residents to understand that a strong and vibrant economic and commercial base within our community helps keep our tax base strong and the rates down. So that's very important, and you got to work very hard at that. And you're right. As our comprehensive plan and the TCD 3 and the ones before it demonstrated, what makes our village truly a special place is a combination of things. It's the schools, it's the parks, it's the residents, it's the businesses. It's all those things rolled into one, and they all are interrelated. So the more we can work together and the more voices we have in the choir trying to achieve that cooperation, collaboration, and communication, the better. So thank you for picking up that gauntlet as well as all the other ones you have in your pocket.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'll stop, and if there are any questions in the audience with respect to the Economic Development Corporation's quarterly report. Thank you very much, Mr. Casa.
Thank you.
And then that brings us to item 4 on our agenda, which is the point in the evening when we entertain public comments of a general matter on items not appearing on tonight's agenda. So if there are any comments of a general nature that anyone would like to speak to or questions you would like to pose, the protocol is to please come down to the podium, give us your name and address, and we would welcome your comments. I was trying to stretch that out for you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Tom LeCren, 545 Chicago Avenue. I just have a couple of quick things tonight which I wanted to get out before the new year comes. And one of those is that these green sheets are one of the major communication tools between the village and us folks out there. I'd like to see that the accuracy of these green sheets be spent a little bit more time on. I've found inaccuracies from time to time, no conspiracies or any criminal intent here, but the case in point was the DMMC meetings. The green sheets at that time said the fiscal year budget includes $36,776.40 in general fund for membership renewal. That's, on the surface of it, that's not a true statement and should have been challenged by somebody up there. Question to Dave, and he explained that they're going to take money from what would have been spent on the lobbyists, and that's fine. But why not say so in the beginning? And the other portion of that is that when you get to the statement was that the dues would be $18,388.20. Okay, when I read the draft of the motion, it said, motion to renew the fiscal year 2011-12 membership for the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference and authorize staff to submit prorated dues in the amount of $18,000. What happened to $322 in some sense? They're small things, but they make you question, and then you make it one or the other. And just be straightforward, hopefully make a New Year's resolution and, we'll be as transparent as we can, which we are in the village and the website. Just do the same thing in here. You'll find that tonight, if you read them on the consent agenda, the 2 items concerned with the aggregate of electricity thing. One of them says the staff recommends approval on the consent agenda. The other one says staff recommends approval on the active agenda. The difference. Just spend a little more time with it, or hire me as a non-paid editor, Thank you.
Well, as an unpaid editor, we would appreciate getting your proofreading comments on maybe Friday evening by 8 o'clock. No, thank you, Mr. LeCren, and obviously the devil is always in the details, or as I prefer to say, God is in the detail, and we'll try to be mindful of those things. Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, commissioners, and staff. As many of you know, I spoke out against the streetlights in the Prentice Creek area before they were installed, because of the excessive cost of each unit, but also because they were part of a deal involving a grant. The grant seemed to make a deal more, seemed to make the deal more palatable, because it cost the village, the cost of the village were reduced by more than 50%. I dislike grants because they're taking money out of one pocket and putting it into another. Someone is paying for those grants, and it is probably us. And the state is in bad shape, and I don't know where the heck they're getting all the money for the grants, instead of giving it to the schools and to the villages like they were supposed to do. The project would probably not have gone ahead if the grants were not given. But to make matters worse, many of the lights are not working. On October 22, about 9 p.m., I made a trip through the area and observed 7 lights not operating. I do not recall what the weather conditions were, but it was probably cloudy that day, and I think most of the problems, the reason they're not working is because of clouds. On December 3rd, about 8:30 p.m., my trip revealed that 5 lights were not working. The day was somewhat overcast, but I did not observe that the wind, some of the wind turbines were operating. On December 6th, about 8 p.m., I saw that 12 lights were not operating, and no wind turbines were operating. Sunday and Monday were overcast. When we drove around a second time, I only counted 10 lights working, but I did not bother to go around a third time to register them. I figured that 12 lights out were more than enough. Let me explain the setup. The lights are combination solar power with wind turbines units, which to say are the least are not very handsome. There are 26 units in the development, so that on December 5th, almost 50% of the units were not operating. And many of the units are on all 3 lists. The members of the council were proud to be pushing a green project and bragged that they were the first ones to use this product. I feel that they should have shown some restraint in pushing a new, untested product. What is going on? It is ridiculous to have streetlights that are not working because of lack of sun and wind, or maybe another problem. It seems the lack of sunshine will occur a lot during the winter weather. Who is going to pay for to have these units fixed or something done for them? And if it's a battery problem, batteries are not environmentally friendly. I am giving a list of the operating units to the staff. I would like to find out what the problem is and what the responsibility of the product manufacturers are.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Falish. Perhaps we can, at some point in time, get a report as to how the streetlight units in Prentice Creek are operating in comparison to what was expected of them. I have a feeling that given the high-tech nature of those devices, there's probably a record within each device, or somehow there's a system where we can actually see, rather than anecdotally, how they have been performing and have been performing versus standards, and they've been performing versus expectations, so we can get a more comprehensive idea of how well they've been performing. Has it been a C, B, and A? Because I understand your comments, and it's intrigued me to ask the question as to how have they been performing more than a spot visit, but if you look at them across the entirety of the year, how have they been doing?
Well, after they were first installed, I made a trip, and I found out Mr. Fieldman said that they were going to take care of it. Now, I've been there when we had sunny weather and the units seemed to be operating. But one of the manufacturers said that after midnight, a lot of their units aren't working, which seems to be kind of silly.
Well, my point is I'd like to know how they're operating against how they were supposed to operate. I don't know what benchmark we're measuring them against, so we'll find out what the benchmark is, and we'll get some indication of how they've been operating over, say, a year period. I'm sure that information is readily obtainable. Then
Well,
we'll find out.
Have the neighbors called about this, the outlet, the outings?
Not that we're aware of.
Well, you know, they use a lot of outside lighting from their homes to keep the things a little bright. But actually, the units, I don't think are as good.
Well, we'll find out. We'll get an objective measurement, and we'll find out whether they've been performing up to standards or not.
And I think they have more units than they would if they had normal street lighting. But of course, there is a saving in electricity, but I believe the units were $16,000 a piece or something like that, which is a lot of money for a
Right,
street
sure.
light.
Well, that's why it was only made possible by the federal grant. I believe it was a federal grant that made those possible, not a state grant.
Yeah, I have another question.
Oh, and I'll just, real quickly, just on the topic of grants, and then by all means, I'd love to hear your other question. But on the topic of grants, there are good grants, there are bad grants, there are grants that come with strings attached, and you do have to be mindful of what grants that you pursue, and not all grants are appropriate. But generally speaking, if a grant's available, yeah, you're right, Mr. Falish, the money is ours. But if we don't go after it, it's going to go to some other town, and it's our money.
Well, yeah, but that's a poor attitude.
I don't know. I'd like to have the money here rather than have it go to Lombard, but that's just my attitude.
Yeah, I was wondering on the Benson Street water treatment or water storage, is that property separate now, or is that part of the real estate deal?
I'm not sure I understood the question.
Maybe
Mr. Fieldman did.
Yes, it's all consolidated into one lot now.
And
Okay.
the people own the tank or the underground storage?
No, they will not. There's an easement that says that that's the village's property, and will own and maintain the facility. But perhaps if Mr. Falish has any other detailed questions, I'll be happy to meet with them and explain any of the details of the project.
You mean we're going to cut the grass and do things like that?
Well, if we had actually kept the whole thing, that's what we'd be doing. So we're
Well,
actually
that's-
cutting less grass.
Okay,
than
well,
we
I
otherwise
was just
would.
wondering how the
Yes.
thing was handled.
Yes, I mean, typically when we purchase and create a stormwater facility like that, yes, the maintenance obligations are ours as well. Sometimes the ones that aren't even ours become our obligation as well. Thank you. Other questions of a general nature? Good evening. Welcome. Michael, would you pass that up?
Good evening. Bill Roble, 7800 Queens Court. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and staff. My appearance here tonight is a matter of information. I'm a member of the Downers Grove Watch Association, and Frank Falish has talked to you before about the impending snow season, and the forecast for this coming winter is 52 inches for Downers Grove. So, or for this area, I should say. And we have started at the Watch the Ogden Avenue Snow Initiative. I was out this afternoon, I should say, contacting some merchants on the north side and the east side of Fairview, talking about asking their cooperation and in praising them of the fact that Downers Grove does have an ordinance, 1921-1, where it talks about depositing of snow on streets and sidewalks is prohibited. It shall be unlawful for any person other than authorized village personnel to A, plow or otherwise remove snow or ice from private property and deposit the same on any village street, sidewalk, or right-of-way in such a manner as to decrease the drivable width of any such street, impede the normal routing of pedestrian traffic, or significantly hamper village snow removal efforts. B, plow or otherwise remove snow or ice from private property in such a way as to block the vision of motorists at any intersection, preventing parking and the curb or covering fire hydrants. I just wanted to call this to your attention because I believe we are making an impact. Some merchants remember us from a couple years ago when we did the same canvas of the Ogden Avenue Strip, and we think it's going to get better as the state comes up with more sidewalks. There are some. I visited a couple people today, Brown's Chicken and DCY Sports, where sidewalk doesn't exist, and they said, well, we don't have a sidewalk. I said, well, there's a right-of-way, it just hasn't been initiated. And I've been at many council meetings where Ms. Snell was talking about the fact that we have a lot of work to be done on Ogden Avenue, but in the meantime, we're encouraging everybody to do their little bit. Take a shovel, keep that pile down, and make it pedestrian-friendly. That's all I had to report today, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roble. And we can refer to these now as the yellow sheets.
Well, you can do that. You have green sheets, now we have the watch yellow sheet.
Yeah, congratulations on the new website, by the way. It's very, very handsome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Commissioner Schnell.
Just a comment for Mr. Falish and actually for staff. When Martin and I were in the National League of Cities, two things occurred. One, when we were in the exhibition hall, they actually had the lights, or similar lights, the ones that we have installed. And in talking to them, one of the things they did say that during cloudy periods, there still is a certain amount of solar energy that comes through to illuminate those station or lights. So I guess what would be important to understand, if there is a way, is exactly how much energy is being produced on a cloudy day, and that does become important as winter comes along and it gets cloudier. The other thing, when I was in the town of Gilbert looking at their solar $10 million project, they actually had a graph that they produce on sunny and cloudy days. And yes, the amount of energy that is produced is reduced, but it's still pretty darn big during cloudy days. So there should be sufficient solar energy that is produced, at least according to what we kind of learned at the conference, that there should be enough to keep those things going. So perhaps, as was stated, we could check or have our contractor check the battery, make sure the batteries are actually functioning properly, because in actuality, at least from what we learned at the conference, there should be more than enough generated from the sun and even from a cloudy day to keep those things going. So it may just be something that is faulty or not functioning properly. So I think that would be beneficial to look at. And again, I know I put our name in, I'm pretty sure you put your card in too, to get additional information from that lighting company. So when that comes through in our emails or in our packets, we'll make sure that you and staff get it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from the audience with respect to matters of a general nature, items not appearing on our agenda tonight? Good evening, welcome.
My name's David Olson, 5601 Dunham Road. Just wanted to thank the council and thank the village for the lighting, holiday lighting in downtown area, the Christmas tree this year. It's really just wonderful. I spent Thanksgiving with some friends, and we were going to go to Starbucks, and just all the lighting, I said, well, why don't we just stay a little bit longer, walked around, went to Every Day's a Sunday as well. So, I think it just makes a great environment, and just wanted to thank the village for their efforts to make the downtown just such a really nice place to stay and for the residents. So, thank you.
Well, thank you. And I know that the Downtown Management Corporation also heard your comments and appreciate them as well. Any other comments or questions of a general nature from the audience before we move on to the next item? Hearing none, that brings us to item 5 on our agenda, public hearings. And we do in fact have a public hearing tonight. This is with respect to the 2011 aggregate tax levy and abatements for the Village of Downers Grove. As we get to the end of the year, we have to take care of the big business items, and this is certainly one of them. I will go through the procedures for the required procedures for this public hearing with respect to the 2011 aggregate tax levy and abatements, and then we will actually follow the procedures. So to begin, I would like to call this public hearing to order. This public hearing has been called by the Village Council pursuant to the Illinois Truth in Taxation Law to consider the proposed 2011 tax levy of the Village of Downers Grove. Notice of this hearing was published in the Downers Grove Reporter, and a copy of the notice and proof of publication have been presented and are made part of the official record of this hearing. I would like to summarize the procedures which we will follow for tonight's public hearing. First, I will ask the village manager to summarize the proposed 2011 tax levies. Second, I will then ask if any member of the council wishes to make a statement or ask a question. Third, there will then be an opportunity for members of the public to make statements or comments or to submit written statements or comments for the record. 4, I will again ask if any member of the council wishes to make a statement or ask a question. Finally, 5th, thereafter the hearing will be adjourned. At this hearing, witnesses will not be sworn, and a verbatim transcript of the statements or testimony given at the hearing will not be prepared. However, a recording of these procedures will be made and is being made on village equipment and will be retained until the minutes of the hearing have been prepared and are approved by the village council. And with that, as advertised, I now turn it over to the village manager for a presentation summarizing the proposed 2011 tax levies. Mr. Fieldman, please.
Thank you, Mayor Tully. It is a brief presentation because there is no new information. In fact, the proposed levy has not changed a bit since we published it originally on September 24th as part of the budget proceedings. You may recall that the proposed levy after abatements is $12.98 million, which is about $393,000 less than the previous year. Again, all this information was presented and discussed throughout the entire budget process and the estimated levy process, and we're happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Thank you. And notwithstanding the fact that nothing has changed since the last time, and we do this because we're required to by law, are there any questions or comments from the village council with respect to this item? Hearing none, we'll move along to the next opportunity for comment from the public. Are there any questions or comments from the public with respect to the 2011 aggregate tax levy and abatements for the village of Downers Grove? Hearing none. One last chance, folks. Final questions or comments from the village council with respect to this item? Hearing none. And again, it's because we went through this once before and nothing's changed, so that explains the lack of comments or questions, not due to any lack of interest or diligence. At this point, then, I will, do I need to move to adjourn? I can just declare, I will then declare that this public hearing has been adjourned and is adjourned. Thank you. That brings us to item 6 on our agenda, which is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments on the consent agenda for members of the council?
I have a question for you, Tony.
Commissioner Chanel?
You had sent a memo out today that the ballot question had to be both in English and in Spanish, and on the internet version, it's only in English, but it will be in both languages?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to
Do both
clarify that.
versions. The one presented on your seat will be the
Okay.
approved version.
Okay, no, I just, in clarification of someone who asked why things sometimes are different, that's why.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rankin?
Although it's in the consent agenda, I just wanted to bring everyone's attention that the village was awarded a grant from the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity for $32,000 for the lights for the Public Works and Fleet Garage, and that's something we should be bragging about, so I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. So well done.
Consider it bragged. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the council? Any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to the consent agenda? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to our active agenda, item number 7, and we have several items on our active agenda. We'll begin with item 7A. Do I have a motion to approve an ordinance to amend water rates and related fees? As much as those words hurt coming out of my mouth, do I have a motion to do so?
Yes, I move to adopt an ordinance amending water rates and related fees as presented.
Second.
Any questions or comments from members of the council? Any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this item? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead? Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, the matter passes unanimously. That brings us to item 7B. Is there a motion to amend the special use provisions? I'll start that again. Is there a motion for an ordinance to amend special use provisions to allow exterior donation collection facilities?
Mayor Tully, I move to amend special use provisions to allow exterior donation collection facilities as presented.
Is there a second? Matter fails for lack of a second. Brings us to item 7C. We'll have an opportunity, sir. Item 7C, is there a motion to approve an ordinance authorizing a special use for, actually, that's right.
Item C is moot, Mayor.
That's right. Item C goes with item B. Thank you for catching that. We'll move to item D. Item C cannot happen without item B having passed, and since item B failed for the lack of a second, item C is moot, as the village manager appropriately pointed out. So that then brings us to item 7D as in David. Is there a motion to approve an ordinance authorizing a special use for 160 Ogden Avenue to permit a drive-through window?
Mayor Kelly, I move to adopt an ordinance authorizing a special use for 160 Ogden Avenue to permit a drive-through window as presented.
Second.
Questions or comments from the council? Commissioner Schnell.
Comment and then another comment, I guess. I want to thank staff, particularly Dave and Tom, and the petitioner for actually changing a lot of the, but adding green space and modifying it according to some of the comments and questions I had at the last council meeting. In reviewing the plans right before the council meeting, and I talked to Dave about this, there's one other modification that I think would help the flow as far as handicap spaces go. And if we could switch where the spaces actually has a little handicap marker on it and switch that with the hash marks, what it would allow is as you go through the drive-through, you'd hit a hash mark instead of the actual parking place itself. So you'd have more clearance between the car, the handicap car, and the drive-through itself. And I think staff said that's something that they could probably do.
Yeah, we'll take that as direction. We'll look and see that if the special use is approved, that the Illinois Accessibility Code and the Americans with Disabilities Act allow us to do that, and then we'll pick that up at the permitting process.
Thank you. And again, thank you for listening to what I had to say and to modifying the plans and to the petitioner the same.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from the council? Commissioner Neustadt.
Thank you, Mayor. Just quickly, as we heard tonight from our Economic Development Corporation, this isn't a new business, but it's a business expanding in Downers Grove. I think that's a testament to our community and its level of interest in business in Downers Grove. We are doing everything we can to work for the improvement of the existing businesses and retaining businesses in Downers Grove. So I agree with Commissioner Schnell that it's great to see a petitioner take some time, listen to the comments made by the village council, and I'm sure the planning commission as well, and bring back a new petition that can be approved, hopefully unanimously. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Well said. Any other questions or comments from the council? Any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this item? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Aye.
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Commissioner Neustadt gets his wish. It's been approved unanimously. With my colleagues' consent, I'm going to break from protocol. There was a question from the audience with respect to an item. I'm not sure what the item was, but if everyone is okay, since we're now about to go to our first reading, sort of our workshop session, does the council consent? We'll hear the gentleman's question.
Yep.
Everyone in agreement? Please, sir, come down.
Bill Robles, 7800 Queens Court. I particularly was interested in item B and C in the active agenda regarding the shopping center at 75th and Lamont Road. The item is addressing actually the Salvation Army request, which was workshopped last week, I believe, before we had to break for Thanksgiving. And I do recall many residents speaking pro and con, mostly con, for having the outside boxes. I made a visitation to the shopping center this afternoon. There is a nondescript box near the Ultra Foods, between Ultra Foods and a Gold Shop, overflowing. There was some stickers on the box asking it to be removed, but it's still there. Couldn't make out, it was clothing and shoes for some charity. But it also brings up the utilization of that particular shopping center. It has become somewhat of a mixed-use type of a shopping center. When I think of shopping centers, I think of retail, and I think of sales tax revenue. And I live on the south end of town, as you probably know. 7800 is just 3 blocks further south of 75th Street. And over the years, I've observed various situations where people try to use it as a parking lot for trucks and so forth. We've addressed that with the cooperation of the police department, and that's been alleviated. Currently, one of my I've identified it to council before, is that there are other businesses that are operating a snowplow business out of that particular shopping center with the consent perhaps of the shopping center owner, but it is a motor vehicle business that operates where used to be Barnes and Nobles. It's just down the way from that. So that, and then now we have still the gas station at 75th and Lamont Road that hasn't been addressed for months and years, perhaps. So we do have one of our economic engines that is being challenged on a daily basis in business unless we address that particular shopping center via the Salvation Army, the boxes in the shopping center. I went past where the Barnes and Nobles, that's being converted to a exercise facility as we speak. And that's where I'm concerned too, because shopping centers are supposed to generate sales tax revenue. I know you sell exercise equipment in a workout place, but you don't get the same kind of a sales tax revenue as you do from an Ultra Foods, for example. So I just want to call this to your attention that Salvation Army is not the only problem at that corner. We have multitude of problems, and I go past it frequently, and perhaps persons in council, maybe the staff doesn't go through that intersection often, but it is our front door from the south, and I think it needs a lot of attention. And I would invite the Economic Development Corporation to look at it seriously. Maybe take the owners and managers of that shopping center to task and not be so supportive of any willy-nilly things that they come up with idea-wise, and respect our ordinances and the integrity of Downers Grove and what we're trying to do here as far as good businesses. So, and that's my only comment. Long comment, but a comment anyhow. Thank you.
I have a comment, Mayor.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Roble. Commissioner Durkin, a comment on the comment?
Mr. Roble brings up 2 points that I want to comment on, if it's all right. The 75th and Lamont Road corridor, that was one of the first things I did with Michael Casa from the EDC is when we did our field trip together, we went through there. So, I mean, he's well aware of that challenging intersection with the two corners belonging to Downers Grove. So I know it's being addressed, and I know it's something that Commissioner Waldeck is as passionate about as the rest of us. So Michael does know that that's an important part of the community. But one of the other items that I wanted to bring up that you brought up, I did go through that shopping center that was referenced, and I believe last year it was, Mr. Rober brought up the snow plows. Our plows are back. Is there any way in the world that we can get them to go somewhere else on that property to park? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what can be done. I don't know if we have an ordinance over it, but I mean, like he says, you see it right off 75th Street. It's right there, and I know the reason they're there probably for vandalism or whatever, but it's, if we want to attract any type of retailer into that area, having that all that, there's not just one. There's, I don't know, what, 15 of them?
Well, there's 4 big units there,
Yeah.
plus plows sitting there.
So.
We looked into that extensively a couple of years ago. We'll take another look at what that effort yielded and get some information back to the council, see what we can do.
Even if we just a friendly call there, I think it's right way, and ask them, can you move them somewhere else?
We'll find out. Good question. All right, thank you. And we'll go back to our agenda. I appreciate the indulgence. We're now resuming, going back to item 8 on our agenda, which is our first reading of various items. This is sort of the workshop portion of our meeting where items are presented for the first time for discussion and consideration by the council, as well as questions and comments from the audience. Each of these items will be up for a vote at a later point in time. So as is customary, I'll turn over the meeting to Village Manager Dave Fieldman to present each of the items A through F under 8 of our first reading agenda.
Thank you, Mayor Tully. 6 items on tonight's first reading agenda.
Sorry, 6.
The first 2 items are resolutions.
Python quote in there somewhere.
I just double checking my count there. The first 2 items are really good news items that speak of cooperation and coordination with other governmental agencies, quasi-governmental agencies here in Downers Grove. They have to do with fleet maintenance agreements. And here to present background information on these items is our Deputy Village Manager, Mike Baker.
Thank you. As the manager indicated, my presentation will reference A and B under the first reading. Two agreements are presented for the council's consideration this evening, and they will allow the village to provide fleet maintenance services to two community organizations, those being District 58 and the Southeast Association for Special Parks and Recreation, commonly known as CSPAR. The village long-range financial plan includes a general fund strategy which specifically talks about partnering with others for the purposes of capturing economies of scale, enhancing revenues, and reducing overall costs. These agreements are an example of staff working to implement that strategy. The agreements will be beneficial to the other organizations and to the village in a number of ways. They will benefit the other entities because they will be able to access needed fleet maintenance services at lower cost, and from a proven service provider that has a track record of performance in areas of innovative fleet maintenance practices, heavy emphasis on preventative maintenance, and experience with alternative fuel vehicles. For the village, we will be able to fully recover the costs of providing the services to these entities, and more specifically, it will allow us to spread the fixed costs, which right now we pay entirely for village-related fleet maintenance work, to these other entities as well as part of that rate that we will be charging them. The village relied on an interdepartmental team consisting of representatives from the finance department, legal department, public works, and village manager's office to evaluate all aspects of this arrangement to determine that it was beneficial for the village and that we do have the capacity to undertake these agreements and perform in a manner that we would expect the exemplary service that we know we'll be able to deliver to these organizations. There's more detailed information about the agreements and the terms included in the staff reports, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Well, thank you. And I know I'm not alone in this, and thrilled to see another example. We were talking earlier today about cooperation, collaboration, and communication with other taxing bodies. This is a perfect example of how we can consolidate where it makes sense to do so, and it's demonstrated that it can be done, and it can be done and result in an actual savings to benefit shared constituents. And obviously we share constituents with District 58 for almost exclusively, not completely, but to a large degree. And to be able to do that and also with CSPAR, I think is fantastic. And that's exactly the kind of thinking and innovation that we need to do in terms of collaboration, consolidation, in order to why does everyone have their own fleet maintenance? There are many other opportunities that suggest themselves they could benefit from something like this. I'm thrilled to see it, and I applaud the efforts to identify these opportunities and to pursue them whenever possible. Of course, I suspect I know the answer to my own question, but one could say, well, why don't we do that for even a broader area? And I think the answer is because at some point we hit capacity of what we can responsibly do and where the return makes sense. And of course, all these things have to make sense. But it is foreseeable that there potentially could be an opportunity for a larger consolidation down the road, since there are a number of taxing entities in town that have vehicles. And again, whether it makes sense or not remains to be seen, but where it does, I'm glad that we're pursuing them. I'll get off my soapbox because I can start talking about all kinds of ways in which we could combine and consolidate with other taxing bodies for the benefit of our shared constituents, but I'll just say I'm glad to see these kinds of things coming forward, and hope we see many more of them. Questions, Commissioner Durkin?
Yeah, thank you. I have two questions. One is, I understand that we reached out to, or the city of Darien reached out to us. What is the status of that potential partnership?
I think we're waiting on Darien. I think we're at stands. Is that right?
We are still working cooperatively with the city of Darien. At this point, my understanding is they are taking the generally agreed upon terms to their council for consideration later this month. And if that proves successful, we will likely be back in front of this council, most likely sometime in January. And it'll give us an opportunity to really determine the full ability to provide service to that organization, which, while smaller than the village, is larger than these other two entities. But we want to make sure.
And would that be like the capping of it then? Or do we still have some room for another organization? As we talk about limited resources and staff and so on and so forth, would that, if we were to take Darien on, would that kind of cap it off, or would there still be some flexibility for
We're approaching the capacity of our current staffing resources. We have a little bit more capacity in our facilities resources. So we would look very carefully. I don't want to sound like an economist, but what we would really do at that point is we'd look at the marginal costs, compare them to the marginal revenues, and we would stop providing the service where those lines cross. So yes, I was paying attention my sophomore year in college, but that's exactly what we'll do. As long as it's beneficial to all of us and it doesn't cause us to incur more costs than revenues, then we'll do it. We are approaching that on a staffing level, so at some point we'll be looking at whether it's beneficial to add more and add staff and still be a savings.
We won't make you draw the graphs and mark the
Please
axes.
don't.
But that's a fair point, because there is a point where that doesn't make sense anymore, or you need to do something like add FTEs, and you would only add FTEs if you knew that you're on full-time employee positions, if you knew that there was going to be a significant benefit from it. But those are the kind of, I think, assessments that we have to be on the lookout for, and where they make sense, where the lines cross. Those are the opportunities I think we need to continue to pursue, because that's the best and fastest way to achieve savings in this environment. Economic development is great, but with all due respect, a lot of those projects take a lot of time, and by the time they start to hit your revenue stream, it can be a while, where these kinds of things can hit your bottom line pretty quickly. Again, where they make sense, not all of them make sense. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No, not at all. The other question I have, and not being an attorney and not knowing if this is even legal or not, so I'm sure all the reporters are anxiously writing this question down. Since we are dealing with taxing bodies of Downers Grove, is there any way that there could be a trade-off? Meaning, we have the FTEs on payroll. Instead of billing them an hourly rate to do their maintenance on these, is there something that we could trade a service with? Instead of, by doing that, we're paying the FTE, the residents' taxes are paying the FTE, residents' taxes are also paying the services being done by Downers Grove. So instead of hitting the taxpayer 2 or 3 times with these different organizations, excluding CSPAR, since that's a little different of an organization than 58 or whatever, is there something that we could do? And I don't need an answer now, but is there something we could, if there's any interest up here, that we could go back to, you could go back to your team, Manager Fieldman, and see if there's something, just to be a little bit more on the cutting edge?
Sure.
Like, if we do any work with the Park District, maybe we hire them to cut our grass. That's what they're in the business of. We plow streets. We do that kind of work.
Yes, it's completely legal to do those kind of in-kind service trades. I think we have a
that's
couple
the
of
word.
examples of those. Yeah, we will take a look in the next week and in the future to see if it makes sense, instead of just charging each other back and forth, if we can each trade for core competency services. Absolutely.
That can be our model for 2012, bring back bartering.
I'm all for it.
Saves money, all for it. Commissioner Barnett.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll join the chorus, I suppose, in being thankful for the innovative willingness to consider new options that our staff and obviously some of our local other government entities are engaged in. And while it may be a fast way to some savings, it also strikes me as potentially a path to growth of personnel that makes me nervous. We talked a lot about, over the last couple of years, about what this village ought to be in the business of doing. Certainly, you can make a case for maintaining our own vehicles. You can also make a case for that ought to be something that we go to private industry for. So I expressed similar concerns when we were talking about investment in our CNG facilities. And I've got similar concerns now. I'm not entirely comfortable, although I love the idea that our team is being innovative and looking for ways to consolidate government entities and try and reduce overall cost. I'm worried a little bit about doing that in areas that the private sector is already servicing and fulfilling potential need for. We could go out right now for every one of those maintenance aspects, most of them. And that makes me a little nervous. So in that vein, are we, when we're talking about rates at which we're billing for, are we covering, some of the more traditional private sector things like depreciation, replacement costs, maintenance, pension obligations, insurance costs? Or is it direct labor and direct parts? Are we doing it on T&M? How are we getting at that? Is it an all-inclusive rate that considers the idea of that we could also not be doing it as well?
It's all-inclusive, and it covers all those things that you would typically see in a private sector business. One of our team members, who's key in setting up the rate, has a strong private sector cost accounting background, and we depend heavily on him to make sure that that item is fully covered, make sure we have money for facility maintenance in that number, all the overhead, all the indirect costs, so we're confident we've covered it with that rate.
What's the termination process for this? Assuming that I guess I'm excluding C-SPAR because they probably don't, I'm assuming they probably don't have a staff of mechanics, but others do certainly. So should this be successful in a couple of years worth of running, there could be, significant operational problems if we just decide to terminate. What's the process by which either we or our other partners would terminate the arrangement?
I believe either entity or organization that's part of the agreement has the ability to terminate with notice of 30 days.
The good news for us, I guess, is if it works well, a couple of years down the line, those capacities are diminished at those other organizations. But it's something I think everybody should be thinking through also pretty seriously about how we would go about doing that and what the impact would be. You wouldn't want to staff in such a way that, so over the course of, you said you're not quite at capacity, but you could get there pretty quick. But you wouldn't want to miss an opportunity for someone to depart and reduce the FTEs because you were doing this and then have that activity go away.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still thinking this thing through, and I'm appreciative of you guys. I don't mean to be throwing cold water on anything. I'm glad everybody's thinking this way, but I'm still processing it all. Thank you, Mayor.
If I could just, I misspoke. It's actually a 60-day notice requirement for termination, again, from either entity.
That's okay. I started it. Commissioner Newstead.
Thank you, Mayor. Full disclosure, I will be one of the users of this fleet maintenance agreement since I am part of the District 58 fleet. A couple of comments. One to Commissioner Gerken's in-kind contribution or in-kind generosity. We do, the village and at least District 58, and I think some of the other entities already have a kind of a, not policy written, but in place sharing of equipment. It's a small component compared to a large intergovernmental agreement like this, but there is a lot of already in place opportunities for sharing of equipment. I know when the tornado came through, we shared some chainsaws. We've got some other equipment that we share back and forth. And I think that the opportunity to look for more is there. Specifically, space usage. The district and the park district use. Park district has district property, and they get to use our facilities for events and things like that. So that is ongoing, and I think there is opportunity for more. In the proximity of having basically my work truck be able to come back here to the fleet garage, sometimes without a wait to get repaired, to get an oil change is great. Right now, at the process we use, District 58 mechanics don't have an opportunity really to work on our own vehicles. We send it to a very qualified and certified mechanic here in town, but that's usually a half a day or a day without your own vehicle. So being able to gain that efficiency as a government employee and a municipal employee is a huge benefit. The other component here, C-SPAR and District 58 have similar vehicles to the vehicles that are already being serviced here at the village. So the speed, the efficiency that is going to be offered by the fleet mechanics will be a great combination and connection to those vehicles that are going to be added to the fleet maintenance back there at the fleet garage. I think this is a great idea. I've already said efficiency. I've said a lot of very interesting words. I'm looking at my notes here. The fact that I can just really pull in the front door and out the back door to get my truck fixed for something small or even something big is a huge benefit, because my truck has a lot of things that I need to maintain the school buildings, and I know C-SPAR uses their vehicles every day to transport their students around town. So these efficiencies gained will be huge in the lives of these, not only the C-SPAR students, but the students of District 58 and the mechanics that use those fleets for District 58. So thanks again to the innovation team and everyone who worked on this. I was able to tour the fleet garage in a different capacity than a council member, as a future user of the fleet garage, and those guys really know what they're doing. It's kind of funny to see District 58 trucks parked next to a fire truck getting repaired, but to Commissioner Barnett's point, we can send out a lot of the work that we do back there, but I think that proximity and the speed that those repairs can be made here in town with our own mechanics will play into the consideration for the monetary usage of our mechanics versus sending a fire truck to wherever it needs to go to get new tires put on, or transmission looked at or overhauled. Those pieces of equipment that happens here regularly. So I look forward to being able to use this service.
Just to pick up on that, Commissioner Barnett's point is a good one, and there are two related issues here. One is whether or not you're going to even have in-house services to do these kind of things in the first place, and every organization has to make that decision as to whether it makes sense to do it yourself or to outsource it, and for various reasons you might want to do it yourself, such as specialty vehicles, the speed and efficiency you mentioned. But once as an organization you've made the decision that, no, I'm not going to send this out, I'm going to keep it in-house, and there's a whole analysis that goes into that. And it may make sense to outsource it and not have your own fleet maintenance. And if that's the case, then we should be doing that. But once you've made the decision, for whatever reasons, to do it yourself, then I think this kind of consolidation cooperation with other entities that have gone through that same analysis and made that same determination that, yes, for whatever reason, the efficiencies, the specialty vehicles, whatever it is, we want to do it in-house, then I think this kind of consolidation makes sense. But I agree that there's another related analysis that is involved here, and that is, do you do this yourself or do you outsource it? Commissioner Rankin.
I think this is a wonderful idea. I was just thrilled to read it on the agenda. The one thing I would caution is that before we start, and it sounds like this is already the plan, before we start inviting more individual...
Jeff's truck is already in the bay right now. It's too late.
That we just kind of wait and see how it all plays out, because you know, you can have something planned out on paper, but you never quite know how it's going to work.
Agreed.
Thanks. Commissioner Schnell.
Actually, most of the questions have been answered, but one, I want to thank staff for doing this. I think it's a great idea. I think in line with what Commissioner Barnett was talking about, in this particular case, we will not be hiring any additional employees. Everything will be done with our present employees.
That is correct.
So there will be no additional costs incurred in the village, and itself will actually get some money, but we won't get any additional
That is
costs.
correct.
And from my perspective, I think one of the things that I find interesting about this is, since we do have capacity in the garage, it seems logical to allow our staff to do jobs over and over and over again, because you can only become more proficient and better at a job if you continue to repeat it. And the fact that we do have capacity, we do have the ability to service other vehicles, I think can only hone the skills of our employees and actually make them better employees. So in addition to additional monies, I think that kind of, thing that you can't really quantify as far as giving our employees the ability to get better at their job, to me, is very important. And I think that's one of the benefits of it too. So I can't say enough good things about it, but I do agree with Commissioner Rankin in that I think we need to proceed cautiously so that we don't get to the point where we're over capacity and all of a sudden, whoops, we've got to pull back. So, do things slowly and make sure it works, and then if we need to add or want to add or other entities want to come in, then that's fine. But, it seems like once Jeff's truck is in there 3 or 4 times a week because he just loves the way we're fixing it.
Because he goes way too fast over the railroad crossing. So he's breaking his axles.
We may have to take it slower, so I'm only kidding you, Jeff. But, I think that, as he said, there's huge benefits in District 58, and I think that kind of information is valuable to all of us. Because any time any other government agency can become more efficient, it can be better, more productive, it's better for all taxpayers. So thanks for sharing that, and thanks for the information.
Thank you. Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. When I first saw this on the agenda, I thought, yahoo, this is a great idea. And usually when it hits me that quick, I got to pull myself back and then I start looking at it in detail. And I do have some concerns, and I share some of Commissioner Barnett's concerns. It's one thing to pool government resources, especially when it cuts costs or improves service. And I think a prime example of that was our VOC. But the concern I have is when we start providing services in competition with private business. And we've had those types of conversations up here in the past. Are we really getting into the vehicle maintenance business? And over the past several years, we keep hearing that privatization is much better than what government provides. And I don't necessarily agree. We've seen where privatization really hasn't improved things. Apparently, we can provide the services better and cheaper than private business. We must be good at what we do. The question remains, is the role of government to do what the private sector can do? Are we interfering in the private sector, and is it right to go into competition with the private sector? And Commissioner Barnett mentioned the CNG fueling. I had that in my notes as well. We had a similar conversation. My leaning is towards approving this, but I do think, and I do want to caution my fellow council members, that we do have to be careful when we tread and compete with private business. And that was just something that hit me, and I'm sharing that with you tonight. So, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Barnett.
This is just another thought that maybe is too much to ask of our partners in this thing. But the goal, in my mind, something that's very important to us, Commissioner Waldeck mentioned VOC, the goal in my mind is to end up with, we've got a situation that exists today, and we've got a potential to have a different looking picture tomorrow. And what we'd like to be is partners in that with the other government entities so that the net result was a footprint on residents and taxpayers that was ultimately smaller. And so, it's a wrong choice of words, but I'm struggling to come up with them in 2 minutes. But some sort of commentary, certification, bad choice of words for all the attorneys in the room, but from these partners that say, yeah, we're doing this because we really believe this is the lowest cost. Not that they wouldn't otherwise, that they would do something for any other reason. But if you go back to the idea that we've got a bunch of capacity to handle this right now, if they don't end up with a lower cost and we forego the opportunity to end up with a lower cost, if we've got a bunch of capacity, we either shouldn't be paying for it or we should be utilizing it, one of the two. Then have we really reduced the cost of operating all these groups for the taxpayers? I don't know the answer to that, but it's something we need to make sure that we're, I think, commenting on for taxpayers.
It's important for the council to understand that that is exactly how the innovation team, the interdepartmental team that Mike spoke of, works here at the village. We're always asking the key questions of a high-performing organization. Should we be in this business? Are we the low-cost provider? What's the way to cut costs? We look at all those issues the whole time. What we really found is we are very competent at a highly specialized set of tasks of maintaining municipal and similar fleets here. So we will get you some information on how that works and the analysis that went into it, both on our side and these other agency sides. But I just wanted to make sure the council and the public understand that the questions that are coming up here are exactly what we ask our innovation team to do on a daily basis, not just on fleet maintenance, but every single service here at the village.
There's another point, though, in what Commissioner Barnett said, and that's when you do the analysis and you determine that it makes sense to embark down this path, then you also have to, as part of that analysis, to come up with how you're going to measure success. Yes. You know, what are you expecting out of this project? How do you expect this to perform? And then how do you measure whether or not it performed up to your expectations or not? I think that's really what Commissioner Barnett is asking, is can we then 6 months, a year from now, go back and say, yes, there actually was a smaller footprint on the taxpayers because of this consolidation. And the important thing is to set up front how you're going to measure that, establish your metrics, which I know is another thing that you meant to say a moment ago, because that's part of the innovation team. Any other questions?
I guess I go back to some of the comments that Commissioner Neustadt made, in that it seems that there will be efficiencies not only in District 58, but I assume in CSPAR, in the fact that they are going to be able to get their vehicles serviced quicker, faster, and get them back on the road and get them back into their jobs and doing what they do well. So, and I don't know how you measure that, except for the fact that I think it's a byproduct of this whole intergovernmental agreement, in that, you know, not only are we having our employees learning and doing things better, but we're allowing other government entity employees to be more efficient and to get their vehicles serviced in a much more timely manner. At least that's, I think, what Jeff was saying. So, and I don't know how you quantify that. I don't know how you put that on paper, except for the fact that obviously someone who does this for a living knows that would be a truism. And I think that's, again, I think that's very important, and it can't always be measured. But yet, if indeed an employee of District 58 or CSPAR is much more efficient in their job, then it's better for all of us as taxpayers. So, you know, if they can get their truck back quicker and are back on the job, that makes sense. You're not going to measure it, but.
Well, you can though, because it kind of reminds me of CompStat in New York, where they actually came up with a whole program of how to measure these things, and you just have to figure out what you're measuring. It might be, how much downtime would a District 58 employee have otherwise waiting for their truck to come back? If that's a day and a half, and after this program succeeds, it's 3 hours, you can measure things like that. But you just simply have to sit down up front and figure out what is it you're measuring, and then you measure it then, and then a year later you measure it and see how you've achieved it. That's kind of how I understand that program works.
Okay.
So it can be done, you just have to figure out what it is you're measuring.
Okay.
And that's the important thing. You don't want to try to measure it later, because then you have to have your measurement up front. And we'll let smarter people than me figure that out. Any other questions?
Yeah, real quick.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's okay. Who else are we handling besides the village? Aren't we handling other people or other organizations for,
It's just the village.
so this is the first reach out?
On the fueling side, we have
Yeah, I know we
agreements,
have a
but
number
on
of
the
those, but-
maintenance side, it's just the village until this point.
Oh, wow. Have we reached out to the high school?
Yes, we've reached out to all the agencies and said, we'd like to look in and explore and go through the same exercise.
How many hours do we think we're going to bill in a year?
I love how that microphone just moves.
Moving microphone.
I don't have that information at my fingertips, but we can provide it to you.
Mayor, I think there's one other quick comment in here that the partnering organization will pay the village for actual costs of parts. That's a very important little bullet point in this green sheet that says most of the time, Seas Part District 58 goes to another mechanic that isn't their own. They're paying an upcharge for that part, for the delivery of that part to the service station. In this case, we're not getting charged extra. We've got 10 or so vehicles I think we're going to be having serviced here. So over a year's time, that's 10 vehicles worth of parts, filters, belts, tires, everything else. That's going to be a pretty significant amount of money that's quantifiable for savings for a taxpayer. So I understand the time of the actual work, the efficiencies and all that. I would be interested to see what the quantifications can be, but I do think that this is going to be a good deal. And actually, I think others will try to come on board once they see that this intergovernmental agreement works.
Fair point. More to come. Questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to either of these items, 8A or B? Please come to the microphone, and we'd love to hear your comment.
Frank Falish, 820 Prairie. Yeah, I'm just wondering what the convenience is going to be. I mean, if these guys are anywhere near busy, one of these other groups just can't come in for convenience and say, hey, fix this vehicle, please. And also, I wonder what do the mechanics have to say about this deal?
We'll have to ask them and get back to you.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you for
Because
your
I don't
comment.
know if they're very busy now. I mean, it seems like that they are not very busy because we're contacting the high school and plus these other outfits. So I'm just wondering how busy these guys are.
Any other questions or comments on these two items?
Just something out there for us to think about.
Thank you, Mr. Falish. Any other questions or comments on these two items? Hearing none, thank you. We'll move to 8C.
The next two items are
Indeed.
both resolutions regarding sales tax rebate agreements, one with Bentley of Downers Grove and one with the Lemon Tree. And here to present items on this tonight is our Economic Development Corporation President, Michael Casson.
Thank you, Dave. Today I'm pleased to present a project that the Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation and the Village of Downers Grove have worked on for some time. Bentley of Downers Grove is proposing to expand their operations and sales at their Downers Grove facility for luxury cars and to make improvements to the site of its existing automobile dealership located at 310-330 Ogden Avenue, including landscaping, repairs to the parking lot, and improvements to conform to the village's sign ordinance. As an incentive to complete this redevelopment project, the proposed sales tax agreement will provide a rebate of 50% of the sales tax revenue received by the village for a period of 10 years after the base amount of $5 million in taxable sales is achieved each year. Bentley shall make these improvements no later than June 1st, 2012. Under terms of the agreement, Bentley shall operate the dealership for a period of not less than 15 years. This project is expected to generate an additional $400 million in taxable sales over the base amount during the proposed 10-year agreement. After the payment of the sales tax rebates, per the terms of the proposed agreement, the village is expected to receive an additional $2 million in revenues during the 10-year period. Because of the sales tax revenues generated by auto dealerships, the attraction and expansion of these facilities are highly coveted by municipalities not only in our area but throughout the country. As you no doubt know, there's been a substantial contraction in terms of dealerships and franchise opportunities because of the economic situation that we're in. It is harder to get franchises and expansion projects of auto dealers. This agreement is a win-win for the village and for Bentley of Downers Grove. The only one that's not winning here is the city of Chicago, because these folks have a beautiful state-of-the-art facility in the city, and rather than invest further in the city of Chicago, they're going to invest here in Downers Grove, and we're going to see the benefit of those increased sales taxes. So I believe this is a great project for our community, and I want to thank Dave Fieldman and Enza for the work that they've also done in this project. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions, comments from the council?
Here, just one quick one. Michael, maybe this is a question for our staff. 15 years was the length of the term. I know we just renegotiated some of the other ones. Was it a 10 or 15-year term for the other car tax rebate?
There's varying terms now because of the way the various deals were structured. Poogie is different than Packy Web, is different than Ziegler. For the most part, most of them are 10-year payment terms and then an additional 5 years that they must stay pursuant to the what they call the clawback provisions of the agreements.
Thank you.
So Bentley expanded into the old Luxury Motors building now. Now I see more cars. Is that part of this? Or, because Bentley used to just be one part and then the Luxury Motors part was kind of not being used for a while.
Yes, they are. These entities are controlling both of the north side properties in that area, and you will see not only expansion and improvements, but more cars making their way as we proceed with these agreements.
Thank you.
Commissioner Schnell?
In the agreement that's online, there's supposed to be a design plan, and the design plan's not in here. Could we get a copy of that before we
Yes.
go on this next week? Thanks.
Any other questions or comments from the council? I just have a comment. Commissioner Waldeck?
Had a number of questions and concerns, but basically, as I go through the cost of redeveloping this property is going to be $190,000 approximately. Was that the, I
Yes.
guess that was the answer that
Yes.
we had. So we're giving up how much to get $190,000 worth of property upgrades?
It's more than the property upgrades, it's the
Well,
revenue from the sales
but it's the
tax.
revenue as well, but sure. But one of the, when you list out the reasons why we're doing it, one of the incentives is to get them to do the upgrades, and the upgrades are really $190,000. One of the other items in the past, when we had Luxury Motors, trying to find in my notes here, we had a hold, I guess it's a holdback type of an agreement. If they didn't perform the way we expect them to, we held things back. But then we also had the opportunity to, we withheld, and then we decided to give back some funds at various points. And what I would like to see in the agreement is a situation where if we do decide to withhold funds at some point, they would take that either we put in that we, somewhere in the agreement that we cannot refund money that we decide to withhold, or that it would take a public council vote to decide whether or not to give withheld funds back.
The language in this proposed agreement in that section is the same as the previous luxury motors agreement. In fact, we created that language for the second version of the luxury motors agreements. And basically, it's the concept of this. The entity has to be in compliance with all village codes and ordinances. And if there's any time they're not in compliance, then we temporarily withhold the payments. If they are not in compliance for a period of 90 days or more, they are permanently withheld and they are forfeited. That language is already in here, and that's automatic. If there's a 90-day or more violation, it's permanently withheld. On the previous one that you mentioned about holding back money and actually retaining it, that was a slightly different situation where we had actually constructed a detention basin to serve a property controlled by Luxury Motors, so the village had incurred out-of-pocket expenses. We backed those out-of-pocket expenses with a financial guarantee from Luxury Motors. They failed to perform at that location. We cashed that financial guarantee and we reimbursed ourselves for the entire cost of the village out-of-pocket expenses for that detention basin. In this case, there was no out-of-pocket expenses from the village at all. So we believe we have covered, with the current language, the concepts that you had raised.
Okay, and then finally, we have a 15-year agreement with a holdback at various times if they decide to leave or do something else. And I think one of the problems we had with Luxury Motors was having another location or using the internet as sales. Now, if you use the internet, we won't be able to keep track of these things. If they have another location, maybe they get a better deal somewhere else. You know, how do we ensure that? I guess what I'm looking for is for some insurance that over the 15-year period that they aren't going to use, let's say, the internet or some other location to skirt the agreement. You know, pull out early.
Well, they don't get the benefit of the incentives unless they meet sales targets.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
So they actually have to sell a bunch of cars in order to even get the benefits out of the agreement.
Mm-hmm.
As I understand, is that right?
That's correct.
But if they
don't sell any cars, they don't get any benefits.
If they switch location, they sell, if the point of sale becomes a different location or an internet, you know, maybe they got a better deal somewhere else down the line.
But they wouldn't accrue any benefits. That would be against their interest to do. They only get the incentives if they sell cars that we benefit from sales tax for, and it's structured such that the more they sell, the more benefits they get. But of course, that's the old issue of 50% of something's better than 100% of nothing.
Part of the deal, though, is to keep them here for 15 years.
Yeah. Right. So if they leave prematurely, then there's a clawback.
Rather than seeking, Commissioner Waldeck, rather than seeking incentives from Chicago to keep the sales there, the sales are, point of sales being transferred to Downers Grove. So the only way that they can get the sales tax incentive is to have that vehicle sold in Downers Grove. If it was sold on the internet or back at their other location in the city, they would lose out on that. Right. So yeah, as the mayor said, it would not be in their interest to do that. They would actually lose money.
Or unless they created or went to another location which gave them a better deal, let's say.
That's correct, and that is always a risk.
There's always that risk, but then we're not losing anything because
right, if
we're
they
not
were
giving them any incentives.
Yes.
But part of the deal is we lost part of the 15 years, which is part of this agreement.
I mean,
I was just wondering if there was a better way to ensure that the point of sale would be.
I mean, there is an obligation to actually comply with the contract in good faith. If you go into a contract with no intention whatsoever to perform, then there would be other remedies, but we don't need to get into that.
There's
happens over a period of
incremental
years.
paybacks in there, should they not operate for the 15 years.
There's no question that the most unpopular clause in any incentive agreement in the United States is the clawback provision. So that they don't perform, they have to give back part or all of the money.
Right.
And so
there's a carrot and a stick. The carrot is they have to sell cars in order to get the benefits out of it, and if they don't perform, then we have an ability to yank stuff back.
Okay, I will muddle my way through that agreement again and again.
And we know that actually works because the example that was given earlier, we were able to use the carrot and the stick, and eventually the stick. It was a six-figure stick, if I remember.
Yes, it was.
And hopefully, I'm hoping they'll be better neighbors than Luxury Motors was. They're not hard to top. They were downright rude to the neighborhood and the neighbors, and employees running across Ogden Avenue. It was a sad situation, it really was. And looking forward to a better experience with Bentley.
Thank you. Commissioner Durkin.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. You know, as I spoke earlier about Michael coming on and beginning to run the first day of his job, you know, this was actually a deal that was being handled and worked through by a previous Greg Bedloff, EDC president, and Michael's the one who brought it to our line. And you know, again, as being that liaison, you know, there was a lot of discussions, not necessarily to the same degree that Commissioner Waldeck has brought up, but a lot of discussions that we've heard and read in the minutes, or not the minutes, but the questions and so on and so forth. But you know, this Bentley of Downers Grove is going to fill a huge void. And if my numbers are correct and my mind is still working, I believe Luxury Motors was approximately $800,000 a year tax revenue for this village. And I believe Bentley is going to be pretty close to that. Now, I know that the numbers we have, I would say, are conservative based on today's economic times. But as we see the economy, and I still believe this economy is going to get better, can't get any worse in my humble opinion, I think those numbers are going to increase, and it's going to be a big win-win for the village. But one thing I want to point out, though, and Commissioner Waldeck does have valid points about, you know, what happens if they move elsewhere. You know, this is Bentley. This isn't Chevy. They can't, or Pontiac, or they're out of business, but Cadillac, where they can move around and go where they want for a better deal. Bentley has a pretty tight rein on where they can put dealers and not put dealers. And I'm not the Bentley market guy, but I think Lake Forest is the closest Bentley besides the Bentley Gold Coast. So I mean, there's not a lot of opportunities for them to move around. So I don't really have that fear that was expressed. But this is a huge win for this village, considering there are some other, what some people would say are more prestigious zip codes to the east of us that would love to have this dealership, and to be able to retain it in our community under a new ownership with a new sales tax plan, so on and so forth, I think is a huge win. Because I don't think you're going to see the problems that we saw when we had the previous owners running that similar operation there, that we all have heard complaints about and witnessed ourselves with people jotting back and forth across Ogden Avenue. So I want to just thank staff and Michael and the EDC for the hard work that they did to get this to our line right now.
You know, Manager Fieldman and I went down and visited their facility in Chicago, and it is one of the nicest dealerships you're ever going to see. This is a well-capitalized company. They do things first class. We're not only going to get a great opportunity here to generate some sales tax, additional sales tax, but that facility is going to look a heck of a lot nicer than it is today.
And you think, and another point, it's a good point that he brings up, you know, as we look at, you know, marketing and retaining and businesses, just think of the path that those that are buying a Bentley, and especially if they decide to shop in Chicago but buy in Downers Grove, just think of the path that those people are going to take to come to this dealership. And just think of the opportunities. I mean, it's a $300,000 car that they're selling out of this place. I mean, those people have a lot of money. At least you would think they do if they can buy a car like that.
So we should open up a jewelry store on one side.
Well, I don't know what we open up there, but the point is that, you know what, we are going to get people here that may not necessarily be Downers Grove shoppers. And you know, I'll be quoted, who knows, maybe people throw darts at me, I don't know about that. Well, you know, I'm just saying though, I mean, if you get Gold Coast people or North Shore or wherever these people are coming from to come here, I think there's an opportunity to do cross sales.
Absolutely, I agree with that. You know,
and I'm not going to give the newspapers any more quotes, I'm being quiet. So.
You know, the village and the EDC and the Chamber of Commerce have put a lot of effort into enhancing Ogden Avenue, not only for safety and to make it more attractive, but we want to generate more business activity, and this is a good way to do it.
So let's hurry up and do it before somebody changes their mind. Commissioner Schnell.
I have a clarification from the staff. This does not include the property on the south side, right?
It does not include the property on the south side. Some of you may have noticed that there are cars parked on the south side. That is actually just to make room for the improvements that are ongoing in the parking lot. Those cars will be moved back to the north side, and they do not even have the authorization to operate from the south side. So this will be north side only.
So the problem of employees crossing Ogden Avenue at inopportune moments will not be occurring.
That is correct.
And they cannot or will not be able to park or work out of the south side?
That's correct. There's additional zoning requirements that would have to be met if they wanted to open a dealer or operate a dealership on the south side.
And I was going through the agreement, and in line with, I think, what Commissioner Waldeck was getting at, there was less than good working relationship between the old dealership and the neighborhoods. And in here, you do have, the attorney has written that we'll comply with all the village codes. So if indeed there is a problem with speakers, or if there is a problem with test driving in neighborhoods, or there's problems with many millions of things that went wrong the last time, the agreement would be null and void if all of a sudden they start doing things they're not supposed to be doing. So I think there is an incentive for them to actually adhere to our code, and if indeed there are problems, to work towards solutions of those problems.
That's correct. We've met with the ownership and the management of Bentley of Downers Grove. We've explained the historical issues. They've committed to operate in a more neighbor-friendly fashion. And just as a side note, the changes that we made to the previous operator's agreement with the clauses we just talked about were working at the last couple of years there. So we had a reduced number of complaints. So we did put in the right carrots and sticks to get the outcomes we're looking for.
And I wouldn't be Ogden Avenue if I didn't ask this question. Are there sidewalks there? Or if there aren't
Yes.
sidewalks, how are they going to put sidewalks?
There are sidewalks there.
Because I noticed that the development just to the west there has put in sidewalks.
Yes.
And nice landscaping in it. I don't know what the business is, but it's definitely a much nicer look to it. So there are already sidewalks there?
Yes.
Thank you.
And my favorite provision is the one the village attorney put in. I think it's 21.16 sub B, where for every ticket that is issued, we get to confiscate a Bentley.
And you get to drive it?
You know, one of the things that they talked to us about early on was that because of the issues with luxury motors, they want to enhance the image of that site as much as possible. They want, as Commissioner Durkin said, people coming from a long distance to purchase a luxury car and to be impressed with what they see. So it's not only that facility, but they're going to work with us on that south side property to develop that as well. They want to see that entire area enhanced as much as possible, because that'll be good for their sales.
Probably
going to see a W Hotel. This is going to be. All right, questions or comments from the audience with respect to this item? The redevelopment sales tax rebate agreement with Bentley of Downers Grove. I say we hurry up before somebody changes their mind. Next item, please.
Well, Mr. Casa goes to get his notes on this. The next item is authorization of a sales tax rebate agreement with the Lemon Tree LLC located in our downtown on Mokel Drive.
The village, thank you. The village entered into a sales tax agreement with Michael's Fresh Market and Lemon Tree Grocer in 2009. The agreement required that both stores continue to operate for purposes of the agreement. Michael's Fresh Market, as you know, is no longer in business at that location, and therefore the 2009 agreement is now null and void. Under the proposed agreement before you, for a period of 8 years, the village shall rebate 100% of the sales tax for only the sale of groceries, including packaged liquor. No payments shall be made unless Lemon Tree is in compliance with the terms of the agreement. Lemon Tree Grocer shall agree to operate the grocery store for not less than 13 years from the date of the agreement, and 51% of the sales in each quarter shall be from the sale of groceries. If Lemon Tree fails to continue to operate, it shall forfeit the withheld quarterly payment and shall pay back the tax rebate on the schedule that is provided in the agreement. At the end of each quarter, Lemon Tree Grocer shall submit sales figures by category to demonstrate that the 51% threshold is being met. The agreement will require the village to rebate approximately $14,000 in 2012, which is 100% of the sales taxes paid on the sale of groceries, estimated annual sales of $1.4 million. Lemon Tree is one of the most visible and popular members of our downtown business community. This proposal not only provides a Lemon Tree with an agreement to replace the one they had, but it provides them with an incentive to enhance and grow their grocery sales, which is the overall goal. Again, I want to thank Dave Fieldman and the village attorney for their work on this project. I've been answering any questions you might have.
Questions, comments from the council with respect to this incentive agreement?
I do.
Commissioner Durkin.
Yeah, is there any way, I know that we put in here 1.4 million was the sales total that they're going to be getting, that was the total sales for 2012? Can we get a breakdown of how that broke down? I mean, is it 1.4 million actually of groceries, or is that an aggregate of everything?
The 1.4 million is the rounded number of the last year's sales for grocery items, including packaged liquor. You remember a few weeks ago when we were talking about their liquor license application, we got a total breakdown which showed annual sales of over 2 million. The difference between the slightly over 2 million and the 1.4 was the restaurant-related sales. So 1.4 is the estimate of groceries, including packaged liquor.
Okay, and then I think we've been pretty, I don't even know what language we use for defining the financials they give to us. But is there a way we can get audited financials?
Yes, right now as the agreement is drafted, it requires a lemon tree to submit true and accurate sales figures in a manner acceptable to our finance director, along with an affidavit stating that they're true and correct. The agreement gives the village the right to audit any sales figures provided by the lemon tree.
Arguably more than an audited financial statement.
All right, and the other thing is, I still have some concerns with this overall, to be honest with you. Have we entertained to them, instead of doing the quarterly, we do a yearly? That we give them back their money at the end of the year, the calendar year?
No, we have not talked about that, but if that's the direction of the council, we'd be happy to do that.
I suspect it's a cash flow issue.
Yeah, you know, when we sat down and talked to them about only
Well, they're not
incenting.
here, so,
Right.
I mean, that just shows you, so.
When we sat down and talked with them, you know, about the issue of only incenting the grocery side, we want to encourage them to reinvest their money. And I think, I can't speak for them, but again, I want to do everything we can do to encourage them to enhance their grocery side of the business. I grew up working in my dad's grocery store in Michigan, and cash flow is an issue for any grocery store. They work on such a tight margin. But we'd be happy to talk to them about it.
Yeah, and I'm sure this number's a lot different than what they were getting when they were with Michael, so, I mean, we're not talking a significant amount of money here, so, I mean, I'd like to get an answer back from that before I'll support this.
We'll get you that information.
I mean, we certainly need the information available to us in order to understand and be comfortable that this makes sense, but I mean, let's face it, this is a very unique situation because of how it sort of landed in our lap. This was something that was an add-on to another project, and the main project is gone, and yet we have what essentially the community was screaming out for, which was a grocery store in the downtown. We heard those cries loud and clear, and there was a very creative solution that was come up with. Kudos to your predecessor for working that out, as well as the staff, but then now we have that, and it's, at least right now, ridiculously popular and successful in terms of an addition to the downtown. But with the huge change of circumstance, we've had to be very creative in trying to do something here. So I'm not suggesting that we do anything to make it work, but you know, I'm certainly going to be very open to something that, if it makes sense, to giving it a try for a year or so. I mean, what's the term of the agreement again?
13 years.
Okay, well, hey, you know, we can keep it.
I'm sorry, 8 years. 8 years.
Grocery store in the downtown for 8 years. That's a pretty good thing, given that I think we heard for, I don't know, Mr. Bedeloff could probably tell us for how many years he was hearing about a grocery store in the downtown. I think it was something he heard 10 times a day. So again, this isn't something that I would do anything to maintain. It's got to make sense.
Okay.
But if we're comfortable that it makes sufficient amount of sense, given that we have what the community had asked for, and I'm not suggesting the village should ever be in the business of subsidizing a grocery store in the downtown. Talk about staying out of the private sector. But if we can do something within the existing framework that makes sense, and everyone's got to be comfortable with it, so your questions are absolutely valid, then
well, I think
we ought to be open to pursuing it.
Correct. I mean, this village has gone above and beyond being creative with this organization.
I don't disagree.
But the question in my mind still exists, you know, is it really a grocery store? Mm-hmm. You know, that's my biggest question. So, and I understand the financials and with our request, but I just want to make sure that, you know, if we put in there that, you know, they're subject to us auditing them or whatever, you know, that's actually an action that this village would actually do. and not just talk it. Because I know years ago, when I first was on the Liquor Commission, we had that, you know, you had to have certain percentages of sales, and it was never ever looked at. You know, they could bring in a receipt and say, okay, this was my sales. We took them for granted. We took their word for it because that's the kind of people we are in a community. But I just have an overall concern just in general. So
We've got the mechanism to demand the information. It's actually got to be supported with an affidavit, which is subject to penalties of perjury. And that's something that if you're not getting it, we can ask for it.
Okay.
Commissioner Schnell, go ahead.
A question. Is 51% sufficient to maintain it as a grocery store? I mean, is that like an industry standard number, or how did we come up with 51%?
I don't think there's anything industry standard.
I don't either, but, yeah.
It's the lemon tree, Maryland.
I know. But
We base that language not on an industry standard, but on past practice on how we handle liquor licenses and definitions for primary business under those sections of the code, and we thought it was applicable here.
Okay. And again, I think it's just, the question is, that means like half the store would be a grocery store and half the store could be a restaurant? I guess is, you know, and one little, or bar. And I don't know, I don't know what the magic number is, whether it's 51%, 55%, you know, 52. I mean, you'd probably pick a number out of a hat. And I'm willing to give this a chance, but I think if we see all of a sudden the restaurant side becoming larger, we need to be, from my perspective, I agree with Commissioner Durkin in that, you know, as I've said publicly many times, I want this to remain a grocery store because that's obviously what we were asked for.
Well, in many respects, we talked about carrots and sticks in the last agreement. We have the same thing here in the terms of incentives and regulations. The incentives, we talked about the 100% rebate on grocery items. The regulation comes not only in the 51% of sales, but the floor plan that's part of the liquor licensing. So they physically can't change and sort of creep into grocery store space because that would be a violation of their liquor license.
And there's a built-in incentive to sell more groceries.
That's correct.
Right, no, and I agree with that, and that's why I like that. I just want to make sure that all of a sudden we don't start creeping, and you know, I don't care if you call it a bar or a restaurant or whatever you want to call it, but that the primary purpose of this has always been to supply groceries or at least some sort of items to people who live in the downtown and the surrounding area.
I think managers said it right. There are carrots and sticks. There's a carrot to sell more groceries because that's what the incentive is for them, which is what you want, what everybody wants. But also, there are regulations that are built in where if they start doing things that are inconsistent with the way it currently looks, they would then be in violation of their liquor license.
Okay.
And that's a big stick.
That's a really big stick.
And it's important as to follow up on what Commissioner Durkin said regarding the annual nature of perhaps the sales tax rebate. Not only do they pay the sales taxes on a quarterly basis, their 51% threshold has to be met on a quarterly basis. They could have come back and said, geez, there's an ebb and flow of sales. Can you base that on an annual barometer, not a quarterly barometer? You're going to track it quarterly. That's in the agreement. So they not only have to generate those sales on a quarterly basis, they have to maintain a majority of their sales on a quarterly basis.
Okay.
Which may be difficult to do for any business to maintain that.
Yeah.
They might come in at 49 sometime.
We'll see.
So,
Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you. I want to press, it's more opinion than questions. And I want to preface my remarks by saying that the Lemon Tree is a great business and it's a great addition to the downtown. It is unique, it is a destination, but my concerns are totally with having a rebate agreement with them. The first agreement, which was the rule, was made so that Downers Grove would have a grocery store in our downtown. And that's what people wanted, and it was in combination with Michael's, and that was the expectation. But at the time, what we were willing to pay for was on that agreement. What we got is not a grocery store, but a partial grocery store. Estimates, if they're accurate, are we got a 50, I think the last totals were something like 53% grocery store. Also, the people who wanted a grocery store did not get what they wanted. They wanted a place to get groceries, a place where you could typically grab a cart, do your weekly shopping, and clearly the Lemon Tree is not the kind of place, it's not your typical grocer. You're not going to go in there and do your weekly shopping with a grocery cart in there, mainly because of the pricing. Lemon Tree has no grocery competition in the downtown. It's a food service It's a food service, and it's in competition. Its alcohol service is in competition. It was also described a few meetings ago as a unique store, as a destination. So we're talking about rebating 100% of its grocery, and it's for something that we hadn't, it's not what we expected. And while we may have turned out as a business being better than we expected, it really doesn't fall into the grocery store that we bargained for. At least I don't believe so. So subsidizing the Lemon Tree would not, I don't think subsidizing the Lemon Tree would be fair to its competitors in the downtown. Its changes, while, you know, its positive improvement, has also moved it away from needing or deserving a rebate agreement. I mean, they're in competition with bars, they're in competition with other food servers, and it's not the, I don't think it turned out to be the grocery store that everybody envisioned. And we don't offer rebates to grocery stores such as Jewel or Dominick's or Ultra or any of the others. So I'm tending not to think that this particular rebate agreement is a good idea. And I might change my mind in a week, but as of right now, I'm having a tough time supporting this. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rankin.
I, on the other hand, think the Lemon Tree is an asset in our town. I think most often anyone you speak to, they're proud of the Lemon Tree. They're glad that it's in our downtown. I don't think it is a typical grocery store, but I don't think a typical grocery store would probably survive in our small little downtown. It probably caters to the people that live right there. I myself go there for specific items that I can't get other places. They have a great meat counter, they have a great cheese counter. So I would hate to see it go away. They've come before us saying that they're struggling to they keep adapting their business model to get things right. So I would hope that we would do all we can to keep them in town. So I'll be supporting this next week.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Barnett.
We got a little information towards the end of the day today, and I want to make sure I understand it. The year-to-date, plus I'm assuming fourth quarter is going to be estimated, rebate made to the Lemon Tree is somewhere around $14,000, right? So I'm going to be supporting this, and the way I see it is, you know, we've had, I think at least twice while I've been up here, usually liquor-related, these discussions about what they are or not, but they've come to us and asked us for a variety of adjustments to the way they operate, and this body has collectively said yes. During this current year, we rebated approximately $14,000. What I'm hearing is for them to continue on as they are right now, they believe they need to maintain that level of support. Certainly we can decide we don't want to support them, but it's sort of a net dollar change of zero to the village versus last year or any previous agreements relative to Michael's and Lemon Tree. Am I understand the math right?
That's correct.
Accurate?
Yes.
So the question in my mind before us right now is Lemon Tree is operating in a way that we approved over the last couple of years. Certainly it's evolved, but it's operating the way this group has approved, and they're asking for continuation of essentially the existing cash flow rebate structure that exists now. It needs to be either eliminated, replaced, or amended because of the Michael situation. The net effect of this would be to keep it the same for Lemon Tree. Is that pretty much accurate? Okay, I'll be supporting it.
Well, you know, this new agreement, I believe, enhances the old agreement in two fundamental ways. One is that now they're responsible for their own success, not relying on another business. And secondly, we are only incenting the grocery portion, which was the original goal of attracting this business to town, whereas the previous agreement was on all of Michael's sales. Sure. So I do think this is a good agreement, and it's going to be up to them to succeed in promoting their grocery business. It's all on them now.
That's all I got, Mayor.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the audience on this item? Incentive agreement with the Lemon Tree. Hearing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Casa. That brings us to 8E as in Edward.
In keeping with our pattern of taking two items at a time, we'll take the last two items at a time as well. Right. Both of these are related to the property at 2110 Prentice or Prentice Creek Apartments. They're seeking a final plat of subdivision and a final plan development amendment. And our Community Development Director, Tom Dabereiner, has background information on these two items.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Oh, I'm going to have to zip through some of these. Sorry. Hey, there's Panera Bread. Salvation Army. Let's see here. I apologize for this.
Well, you came loaded for bear and we fooled you.
Well, you know, you just never know where the questions are going to go. Well, so here we go. There's Prentice Creek. An ordinance and a resolution have been prepared for a final planned development amendment to Plan Development Number 1, Prentice Creek, to first of all construct an addition to the existing clubhouse building, and secondly to consolidate 3 lots into one, and we're looking for approval on the December 13th active agenda next week. Here is location, the Prentice Creek apartment complex located west of Woodward, which on the map is shown here. Here is 63rd. And there's the Prentice Creek area, apartment area. It is a almost 33-acre apartment complex. The clubhouse
Can you point
addition.
out all the streetlights while you're there?
The clubhouse addition will be powered by solar and wind. I'm kidding about that.
I'm just
That was
kidding,
just
Mr. Phelan.
Where's Frank? There he is. Okay. Here is an aerial. The clubhouse addition will increase the size of the existing building to about 7,800 square feet. It will include a new leasing center, a community resource center, a cyber cafe and business center, a fitness center, and other uses and rooms. The set of improvements is actually fairly comprehensive. We do have the proposed building additions. We've got a dog park enclosed on the west side, a number of picnic areas throughout the site. This is the location of the existing clubhouse, shown in blue. The addition is shown in red here with the new and improved parking lot and two-way driveway circulation that is showed there. Petitioner will do all of these things and reconstruct the existing parking lot, and is proposing to consolidate the 3 lots north of the Prentice Creek Drive, which, let's see here. There is some elevations for the clubhouse. The 3 lots really are divided east-west with a square covering the clubhouse area. Can't really see it that clearly on there, but just to give you a sense of what we're talking about, this is really the clubhouse area and the lot, and if you draw a line approximately like that, you've got the west half and the east half for the apartments. Those are the 3 lots that are proposed for consolidation. There's no new infrastructure that's required. However, the petitioner is proposing a new stormwater detention facility underneath the parking lot. The proposal is consistent with the vision and goals of the comprehensive plan, in that it represents a reinvestment in an established neighborhood and keeps the property as multifamily residential, serving as a buffer between the retail to the north and the single-family residential to the south. All of these elements were recognized in the comprehensive plan. Plan Commission considered the petition at its July 11th meeting. There was no public comment at that meeting. The Plan Commission recommended two-way circulation in the parking lot rather than one-way. That has been accommodated now. The Plan Commission found that the proposal meets the standards for approval for a final plan development amendment per Section 28.1607 of the Municipal Code, the zoning ordinance, and unanimously recommended approval of the special use. Staff concurs. I'd be happy to answer any questions. We do have a representative here from Prentice Creek as well, if needed.
Thank you, Mr. DeBruiner. Questions or comments from the council on this item? Commissioner Schnell.
Just a comment, a couple of comments. One, I'm really happy to see the investment being made into this particular apartment complex. It's been an apartment complex that has had some issues and some concerns in the community, and I think any enhancements that can be made to make it a better living environment for the people who live there, the better we are. I also want to congratulate the petitioner in resurrecting, if you want to call it that, the resource center. That has always been, I actually went to a few of the sessions there, and it is or was a community attribute, I think, to the people who live there. So I'm really happy to see that they're going to be incorporating that into the new clubhouse. And I guess I just want to take this opportunity to thank the corporate sponsors that actually renovated the 2 apartments into the resource center. Volunteers, I think, from Home Depot and from other establishments and businesses in the community did a lot to really make that a place that kids could flourish and thrive in. So I just want to thank everybody who was involved in it, particularly thanking the petitioner for investing the resource center back into the clubhouse. I think that's something that will help the community as a whole too. So I view this as a win-win situation. It can only make that whole area better and a better environment for the people that live there. So thanks to all involved, and looking forward to, again, investment, economic development investment in our community. I think this is another example of people viewing Downers Grove as a great place to live and work and play and investing in it. And I congratulate everybody involved.
Thank you. Well said, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from the council? Questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this item? Items, excuse me. We're taking them in duo tonight. Hearing none. Thank you very much.
And that ends our first reading tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
That brings us to the end of our first reading and the end of our workshop discussion. That brings us to item 9 on our agenda, the mayor's report. And I do have a few items to report upon. The first one is in fact a continuing update as to where things stand on the ComEd situation. It's been a few weeks since my last report, so I have a few things to report. First, with respect to where ComEd is regarding the items that they indicated they would be working with us within our community to improve in terms of enhancing reliability of service. ComEd has completed some equipment replacement projects designed to improve the reliability of certain circuits identified in their reliability report, which is what was presented back in conjunction with the town hall meeting that we had earlier this year. And those equipment-related, we like equipment-related improvements, are 3 principally. 1, low-hanging wires and 2 poles were replaced near the intersection of 55th and Carpenter. 2, a transfer, or is it a transformer? Transformer, okay, I think it's a transformer. Located near the intersection of Franklin and Elm was replaced, that's good. And 3rd, a mid-circuit closure was installed near the 1800 block of Prairie. So those are the equipment improvements that have been actually done so far, and I know that we have more on our list. With respect to the non-equipment related items, tree trimming primarily, tree trimming efforts are scheduled to commence in the first quarter of 2012 and may start as early as January. ComEd has submitted their tree trimming plans to the village. Our village forester is reviewing the plans and will provide ComEd with comments, so we're staying on top of that. Prior to the start of the tree trimming, the village will place a map of the trees to be trimmed on the village website and will require ComEd to notify affected property owners to the extent we are able to do so. We aren't always getting the information in the right time frame and in the right degree of completeness and accuracy as we would like, but to the extent that we get the information or require ComEd to get the information out there so the residents are aware when tree trimming will take place and to give them advance notice and that we have input, we are doing our best to work with them to do that. But we are continuing some follow-up phone calls to make sure that we're getting information that is accurate and timely, which has not always been the case, I'm afraid to say. One other quick thing with respect to ComEd that everyone would be interested in is that after the passage of the smart grid legislation, there was an effort to work out some protocols with ComEd that would be submitted with its regulatory materials early next year with the regulatory board. And those protocols were primarily designed to improve the responsiveness and communication, which were also big issues last summer with all the outages. Those protocols, there are various different municipal conferences that have been involved in that. There was a process that was begun that unfortunately did not include some of the municipalities that have a high degree of interest in them, including Downers Grove. Through DuPage mayors and managers, that conference has gotten involved in that process. And at the last meeting I was at, there were 3 members of DuPage mayors and managers these are actually mayors and managers who've been spending a fair amount of time attending these protocol discussions. I wish I could say that the discussions have been going positively. Apparently, it's so convoluted that it's very difficult for people to actually get behind them in terms of viewing them as improvements and enhancements to responsiveness and communication, such that they are acceptable. To where things stand right now is that it is viewed that they may not be able to reach an accord. When I say they, I mean all the municipalities and COGS, not just DuPage mayors and managers that are involved in talking and commenting, such that they will actually be acceptable. And if they're not acceptable, then we'll end up back with what we had before, which would not be ideal because what we had before was pretty rotten. But stay tuned because those efforts are not over. They are continuing. But the good news is that we're getting information back from other people who are spending a lot of time at these negotiations where we don't have to, although we could. And to the extent that any of you have time to sit in these discussions and want to report back to us more directly, I would welcome your volunteerism in that regard. But it's nice to know that we do have people in the room that are reporting back to us as what's happening. And I will try to update you as I have more information in that regard. So unless there's any questions on comment from anyone in the council or the audience, sure. Commissioner
Real
Durkin.
quick, last week, there was a bunch of lines being replaced in the El Sierra area, particularly around my home. Was this part of the discussions and ongoing interactions with ComEd and the power outages and stuff? Do we know?
I was not aware of that work because we didn't talk about it with our last meeting with the ComEd representative. However, I do know that that was a problem area that was identified just before we had the issue in the ComEd reliability report. And they did indicate to us at the first set of meetings that they would be continuing to work in that neighborhood. So it doesn't surprise me that they're doing it. We will get you some more information about where they are in that process.
If you could, I'd greatly appreciate it because I don't want to have misspoken to those that called or reached out to me. But there was a lot of activity for a full week, as a matter of fact. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the audience with respect to the ComEd update? 2 more items. The next one is with respect to the DuPage County Stormwater Management Planning Committee. For those of you that have been following this story, the DuPage County Stormwater Management Planning Committee and DuPage County have been working for some time on a new and improved stormwater ordinance for the county, which would affect Downers Grove as well. That draft ordinance has been out for comment on multiple occasions. We have commented both directly as a municipality. We've also commented through the DuPage mayors and managers, as well as a number of different municipalities in DuPage County have commented on it. The general consensus is, and I don't want to speak for everybody, the general consensus is that the proposed ordinance is a great improvement over the previous one. It is certainly not perfect, and there are some municipalities and individuals that are pointing out the flaws, but it is a vast improvement over what went before, and the consensus is that it should go forward and be approved with attention to the remaining issues as time goes on. The last time I spoke, I think I said that the DuPage County Stormwater Management Planning Commission was expected to see the final draft for final discussion and approval at the most recent meeting, which was today, this morning, December 6th. That did not happen. It's not quite ready yet. It is anticipated, I actually spoke with Chairman Zay, and it is anticipated that the ordinance will be presented to the committee for discussion and approval at the January meeting of the DuPage County Stormwater Management Planning Commission meeting, which is going to be moved back to the 3rd Tuesday in January, January 17th. So when I find out what's happening and on January 17th, I'll report back to everyone, but that's where that development stands. Any questions or comments on the county stormwater ordinance? Any questions from the audience of the stormwater ordinance? More of an update than anything else. And then finally, on my report, we do have some appointments to make tonight with respect to our Human Services Commission. 2 members that we're very pleased who have offered to serve, and I'd like to take up their appointment at this point in time. And as is customary, I'll ask our fine village clerk to please read the resolution appointing those members.
A resolution appointing members to the Human Service Commission. Whereas Mayor Tully has made the following appointments to the Human Service Commission, now therefore be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Downers Grove does hereby confirm the following appointments. Appoint Kelly Johnson and Sophie Bowerman to 3-year terms expiring August 31, 2014.
Do I have a motion to adopt that resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments from the council? Commissioner Barnett?
Mayor, if I could just for a moment, take a couple of minutes by way of a few sentences, introduce these two candidates for appointment to my colleagues and the audience. Kelly Johnson and Sophie Bowerman both come to us as volunteers with, I think, interesting and perhaps appropriate professional service and professional histories of employment also. Both Kelly and Sophie are currently stay-at-home moms. Kelly is a graduate of Loras College in Dubuque and worked in the advertising industry before staying home. She currently is a volunteer at Whittier and Herrick, the Teen RE facilitator at St. Mary's, and a PADS volunteer. Sophie was a practicing RN for 15 years. While she's a stay-at-home mom now, that time as an RN was spent at Memorial Hospital, Northwestern Memorial Hospital. She currently serves on the wellness board at First United Methodist Church, and she's run a community outreach program for postpartum depression, support, and education. Both of these residents are I think, well qualified, and I appreciate your consideration. I'm excited about their addition to this board. This board is one that is, as many know who have followed this body, I think is underutilized, and I'm looking forward to them jumping in the fray and taking on some big topics to try and improve our community in the future.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate the time you took to interview them and recommend them to the rest of the council for consideration. Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to tag on to what Commissioner Barnett said, I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank the people they are replacing. I believe former Chairman Scott Jackaway and Tim Meany, who served that commission very well over the years. And we thank them for their service.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well said. And obviously, we thank them for their service as well. And with that, roll call, please.
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. The appointments are passed unanimously, and my thanks and appreciation and welcome to both Kelly and Sophie on their service. We'll be taking up as a council some topics with respect to Human Services Commission matters ourselves, and to the extent that we have things to follow up with them on, they'll be ready to go. That ends my report. That then brings us to item 10, which is the manager's report.
One quick item tonight, Mayor. We plan on canceling the December 20th Village Council meeting. That means that next Tuesday's meeting, December 13th, will be the last meeting of 2011. And that ends our report.
Okay, so everyone is duly warned. Last one in 2011 is next Tuesday. Thank you. Attorney's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 6 items to present this evening, all of which will be on next week's active agenda. The first is the 2011 active tax levy ordinance. The ordinance abating a portion of the 2011 tax levy related to the general obligation bond Series 2005, Series 2007, Series 2008A, Series 2008B, Series 2009, Series 2010, and Series 2010B. An ordinance for the levying of taxes for the fiscal year commencing on the first day of January 2011 and ending on the 31st day of December 2011 for the Village of Downers Grove for Special Service Area Number 2, which is the downtown service area. Also an ordinance for the levying of taxes for the fiscal year commencing on the first day of January 2011 and ending on the 31st day of December 2011 for the Village of Downers Grove Special Service Area Number 3, Prince Pond. A resolution approving the final plat of subdivision for 2110 Prentice Drive, and an ordinance approving a final plan development amendment to the plan development number 1 for an addition to the Prentice Creek Clubhouse.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 12, councilmember reports and new business. Start with Commissioner Neustadt.
Thank you, Mayor. 3 quick things. First off, the Village of Downers Grove is hosting a coat drive. Started on November 28th and goes through January 8th. You can drop off clean, gently used coats here at Village Hall or at the Downers Grove Police Station. Coats will be distributed to the community using Sharing Connection. Another charitable opportunity is with the Downers Grove Chamber of Commerce. The holiday after hours and toy drive is this Thursday, December 8th at Downers Grove Golf Club. participants are welcome to come and bring a clean, unwrapped toy, right? Unwrapped toy? And last, we celebrated our tree lighting ceremony a couple weekends ago. I just want to say a special thank you to the Downers Grove Public Works crews who put up the lights, as we heard from a resident tonight, put up the lights on the tree. Worked very hard to get that ceremony put together, as well as the Downers Grove North Marching Band and all of the village staff that were there to participate, including Downers Grove TV, who on our website has a great video of the event. So if you missed it, you can check in and see it. It's live on the website. Thanks. Not live, I guess, but recorded and edited from a live shot. Michelle was there. And,
we could reenact it if we could.
Sam is too busy.
Yeah, he's a very busy guy these days. So that's all I have tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And thank you for being there as well. Commissioner Rankin.
I'll just add that I watched the tree lighting ceremony, and the end could be like a commercial for Downers Grove. You guys did a wonderful job. It really looks nice. So, good job. And
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you. The rumor has it there's a bootleg version of the video floating around on Facebook, but that's just an unconfirmed rumor. Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two items. One is, for my report, is just to encourage everybody to shop Downers Grove, especially if you plan on buying a Bentley within the next few weeks.
Buy two.
For Christmas.
Why not? It's Christmas. Everybody get a Bentley. In new business, something that came to light as a result of this meeting, Mayor, is what might be a potential flaw, or what I consider a flaw in our agenda format. We have a tradition of encouraging attendance at our meetings and allowing public comment. So when we modified our meetings and our agenda, we made provisions for comments on a general matter not on the agenda. But comments on matters on the agenda have typically been called when the agenda item is called by the chair. However, under Robert's rules, if an active agenda item is not doesn't receive a motion or a second, the item dies without official opportunity for public comment. So feasibly, we at some point, and I'm not saying you would do this, Mayor, because you opened up to public comment, but feasibly, we could have a room full of people ready to talk on a particular topic, but if for some reason the item comes up and it isn't, there's no motion or no second, it dies and there's no provision for public comment. So I would ask that we take a look at this and either, I don't know, one way to do it might be to reinstate allowing public comment for items on the agenda at the beginning of the meeting as we used to, or if there's some other way to work around and make this official, so that we don't need to rely on the generosity of the chair to allow public comment even though an item has died. So I hope we would look into that, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And yes, that is something that we try to be mindful of and figure out ways to somehow make sure that people are, regardless of, still being respectful of Robert's rules. Commissioner Barnett.
I have nothing.
Commissioner Durkin.
I have no report.
Commissioner Schnell.
I do. I actually sent the village manager a copy of the latest Traffic Logic newsletter, which you probably have on your thing now because I was reading it while we were doing some of this. And it's extremely timely. It is about what will your roads be safer in 2012, and it talks about avoiding complacency, about traffic calming, how do you make your streets safer, what can you do within budget constraints, et cetera, et cetera. And I would just ask that you not only pass it on to staff, but if you could send a copy of it to the rest of the council so that they could read it, I think that would be extremely beneficial. And probably I'll try to send a copy to Mr. Roble so he can read it too. But it has a lot of very timely information. This is one of the booths that we visited at the National League of Cities, and I believe Commissioner Durkin, when he went to National League of Cities a few years ago, also visited this particular booth because they have to do with traffic calming. But this
that's
is,
where I brought back that sample.
I know. This is probably one of the more timely ones I've seen lately, and I think there's just a lot of benefit to it to the entire council. So if you could do that, would be great. And happy holidays, and shop locally, and we do have one more meeting, so we can leave the rest of it until then.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Just a few things that we haven't met since the weekend after Thanksgiving, and the tree lighting ceremony was already admirably covered by my colleagues, so I won't add to their comments other than say that was very well done, and I'm sure it was the weather, but it was extremely well attended. That was really nice. I was glad to see everybody come out for that, and a good time was had by all. Of course, that was also the kickoff of the Gingerbread Festival, which the Downtown Management Corporation is putting on, which is another reason to bring people downtown. Speaking of bringing people downtown, I think the Bonfield Express 5K once again broke its own, achieved another personal record for itself in terms of attendance. I think there were close to 5,100 people that were there. Again, the weather was very conducive to a great race, and it was always nice to hang out with that many of your neighbors on Thanksgiving morning. So it's a great thing. And then last, I know that there will be an official ceremony later this week, but we all want to congratulate Highland School, speaking of District 58, on achieving the very prestigious National Blue Ribbon School Award from the U.S. Department of Education. There will be a celebration/ceremony honoring the school on that impressive accomplishment, and that's only a few years after Pierce Downer achieved that same status. So there's a pattern here in District 58, but one that should not come as any surprise to those who are either products or contributors or staff within District 58 of achieving such excellence. But at any rate, I digress. The celebration ceremony is on Thursday, December 8th at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I just generally want to congratulate Highland School on achieving that very impressive accomplishment. There was one other item that I wanted to mention with respect to that, but I'll save it for next week. We are not going to adjourn tonight. We actually have an executive session that we need to go into, but we won't be coming out and voting on anything, so no need to hang around. At this point in time, I'd request a motion to convene into closed session pursuant to Section 2C1 of the Illinois Opens Meetings Act.
2C1?
To consider the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the village.
Okay, I move to convene into closed session pursuant to Section 2C1 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act to consider the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of a specific employee of the village.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Thank you. We are now convening into closed session. Good night and thank you.
Sean's aye was really loud.
One in my mind.